Chapter 1246. This was the deepest part of the giant city. There were pavilions on the left and right sides of the city. The pavilions were of the same height. Some of them were still in good condition, while others had completely collapsed into ruins. But no matter if it was the broken pavilions or the ruins of the pavilions, there were many demons of the void standing on them. Every demon of the void exuded an astonishing aura. Chen Zong's eyes slowly swept across and fell on something in front of him. It was a huge mansion. It should be the city lord's mansion of the giant city. It was the largest and tallest building in the giant city. But the city lord's mansion was also in ruins. There was a figure standing in the only intact hall. The figure was about 2 meters tall and looked extremely vigorous. Its whole body was covered with jet-black scales. The scales were distributed like dragon scales. It was the first time Chen Zong had seen the appearance of this demon of the void. It was like a half-demon, half-dragon, half-human existence. Its pupils were vertical, fragmentary golden, and cold, indifferent, and ruthless. This demon of the void crossed its arms in front of its chest. Its long tail seemed to be swaying unconsciously. The tip of the tail was extremely sharp. It easily cut through the air like a sword, making a slight chi-chi sound and leaving scratches. High-level half-saint. This was a high-level half-saint demon of the void. It was very powerful. Its aura made Chen Zong extremely fearful. Chen Zong couldn't ignore its vertical, fragmentary golden pupils. That gaze was too sharp. It condensed like a solid sword aura, bringing Chen Zong a strong invisible pressure. Chen Zong was capable of killing ordinary low-level half-saints. Chen Zong wasn't sure if he could kill ordinary middle-level half-saints, but he thought he could contend with them. Chen Zong didn't know how strong ordinary high-level half-saints were. After all, the difference in strength between the 3 levels of half-saints was very obvious. Standing on the left and right sides of the high-rank quasi-holy rank nefarious devil dragon man, there were 2 tall figures standing on top of 2 sentry towers 100 meters apart from each other. He had the appearance of a minotaur and was wearing a pitch-black heavy armor. He was 4 meters tall and looked like an iron tower. He emitted an extremely shocking pressure that suppressed the surroundings. Layers of spatial ripples spread out like water wave. One of them held 2 heavy axes, each of which was 2 meters long. The axes were as large as wheels, and the edges were extremely sharp, emitting traces of blood-red light. The other one held 2 huge black hammers. They were like pumpkins that had been enlarged many times over, and they were covered in sharp spikes. They looked extremely ferocious. The aura emitted by the 2 ox-headed evil void devils was only slightly weaker than the dragonoid evil void devils. A mid-level half-saint. Apart from that, there were also 8 low-level half-step saint void demons standing in the 4 directions. There were hundreds of low-level half-step saint void demons, 8 low-level half-step saint void demons, 2 mid-level half-step saint void demons, and 1 high-level half-step saint void demon of the void. This kind of strength was very, very strong. The pressure it brought to Chen Zong was omnidirectional. It was a pressure that came from all aspects of Chen Zong's spirit. It was so heavy that Chen Zong felt suffocated. But no matter what, he could only fight now. He had to win. He had to kill the hundreds of low-level half-step saint void demons here, whether they were low-level half-step saint void demons, mid-level half-step saint void demons, or high-level half-step saint void demons. He had to kill them all. Only then could he leave this place. Taking a deep breath, the 9 spiritual wheels kept rotating. His super-spiritual energy was vigorous and mighty. It kept circulating in his body and slightly reduced the pressure Chen Zong had to bear. This kind of pressure was enough to make the legs of ordinary low-level half-step saints go weak. Even mid-level half-step saints would be suppressed. But Chen Zong didn't. He withstood it. Chen Zong's willpower was incomparably strong. His strength was also very strong. That was why he could maintain his state under such terrible pressure. Chen Zong's gaze swept across, taking in the position and posture of each and every one of them. His thoughts spun rapidly, and his thoughts moved like lightning. Chen Zong knew that the following battle would be incomparably difficult. This battle was either a life or death battle. So, it was very necessary to make all preparations. Once this kind of battle started, any mistake would lead to his death. His super-strong soul allowed Chen Zong to know the position of all the hundreds of demons of the void. Every movement was reflected in his mind. In an instant, Chen Zong saw everything as if he was standing on a high place. Indescribable lofty sentiments gushed out from the deepest part of his heart like a volcanic eruption. His astonishing aura soared to the sky. Kill! A low roar came from the deepest part of Chen Zong's throat like rolling thunder. It shook and shook in all directions. It was like the first divine thunder that split heaven and earth. The high-level half-step saint of the void said one word. Chen Zong couldn't understand it, but he could feel the extremely cold and murderous aura. In an instant, hundreds of demons of the void moved. They exploded with astonishing speed and closed in on Chen Zong from all directions. Direct impact, arcing back, falling from the sky, ground attack. In an instant, Chen Zong was faced with the attacks of the demons of the void from all directions. Every attack was very frightening. Every attack had the power to threaten Chen Zong's life. Chen Zong was not afraid at all. Instead, he became more and more excited. An indescribable excitement burst out from the deepest part of his heart and spread throughout his body. Like thunder and lightning, it made his blood boil. His muscles and tendons trembled together, and an even more astonishing power filled the air. Then, his dragon force also went berserk. Although Chen Zong couldn't use the power of the heart-calming sword and couldn't fuse the power of the two cultivation systems into one, the power of his super-spiritual energy was many times more powerful than that of the heart-calming sword. This didn't mean that Chen Zong's body-refining dragon force was useless. In fact, a tyrannical body was still very useful. It gave Chen Zong great strength, extraordinary speed, and astonishing defense. It was better for him to survive and adapt to all kinds of environment. Moreover, the body-refining dragon force could also be used. When it was used, it could make his body's strength stronger, his speed faster, and his defense stronger. In the previous battle, Chen Zongdo had only used his super-spiritual energy, so this time, in addition to his super-spiritual energy, he also had to use his dragon force. Firstly, he could better protect himself, and secondly, he could better unleash his strength and speed, making him stronger and faster. Boom! The body-refining dragon force exploded. As his muscles contracted and expanded, a tyrannical power burst forth. The super-spiritual energy swept through the heavy dragon sword. With a horizontal slash, it was as if it could wipe out 1,000 armies. The majestic black sword light was like a thick brush and ink that suddenly swept across. It circled around in a circle, bursting forth with incomparably astonishing power. The heavy dragon sword's astonishing weight of 98,000 pounds was also fully displayed. With one slash, a group of evil void demons immediately closed in on him. With a shake of his shoulders, Chen Zong's figure was as light as a feather. He was also as swift as a gale. Like an illusory cloud, he instantly cut in between two evil void demons. The heavy dragon's sword suddenly trembled. As if a dragon's roar resounded, it directly cut one of the evil void demons in half at the waist. Even though the evil void demons had astonishing vitality, after being cut in half at the waist, they lost their ability to fight and quickly died. It should be known that Chen Zong's heavy dragon sword's ferocious attack was extremely terrifying. He suddenly stomped on the ground. With the sole of his foot as the axis, he twisted his waist and his body spun. Bringing along a terrifying whirlwind-like power, the heavy dragon sword slashed toward another evil void demon. Another evil void demon was cut in half at the waist. 2 of the several hundred evil void demons were killed by Chen Zong. However, to the several hundred evil void demons, 2 more or 2 less didn't make much of a difference. That high-level half-step saint-rank evil void demon's golden vertical pupils were ice-cold and emotionless. It was indifferent to life. Condescendingly, it looked down at Chen Zong like a god, taking in Chen Zong's every move. It was observing Chen Zong's every move. It was looking for an opening to kill him in one strike. The stronger the evil void demon, the more intelligent it was. If one treated the evil void demons as a kind of wild beast that only had strength but no brains, one would definitely suffer a great loss. Humans were intelligent creatures, and so were the evil void demons. In the eyes of humans, the evil void demons were aliens. In the eyes of the evil void demons, humans were also aliens. The 2 mid-level half-step saint-rank evil void demons didn't move. The 8 low-level half-step saint-rank evil void demons also didn't move. They all stared at Chen Zong, observing this human. The evil void demons were the greatest enemy of almost all creatures in the universe. They were the enemy of all races. As the enemy of all races, in addition to their own strength, they also had to know how to learn the advantages of other races to further improve themselves. Only in this way could the evil void demon race live on forever, invade more worlds, and strengthen their race. Therefore, in the eyes of these half-step saint-rank evil void demons, this human had a lot of potential. They could learn from him. Although the Ice Empress had used her own power to create the illusory battlefield was basically the same as the real illusory battlefield apart from the fact that the illusory battlefield wasn't a real illusory battlefield. This was to give the geniuses a better understanding of the illusory battlefield. Fight. It was an incomparably intense battle. Hundreds of void devils were fearless, and each of them was proficient in battle and slaughter. Every single one of their attacks was aimed at Chen Zong, wanting to blast him into smithereens. This made Chen Zong face an extremely great challenge. However, under this extremely strong and suffocating pressure, Chen Zong's essence, qi, and spirit were constantly condensed and raised to the peak. All the mysteries emerged one after another, incomparably clear and easy to understand. Everything was under control. From time to time, he would use the 5 feet unbreakable sword circle to block all the attacks of the evil void demons. Then, he would turn defense into offense and kill the evil void demons. One evil void demon after another was killed by Chen Zong's heavy dragon sword. Chen Zong's strength was also constantly depleted. The strength of several hundred void demons was very strong. If it had been an ordinary low-level semi-sage expert, he would have been killed long ago. However, Chen Zong was still able to hold on. Moreover, he had killed more than 20 void demons. When the number of evil void demons reached 50, the Dragonman evil void demon opened its mouth and said something. Immediately, 8 low-level half-step saint-rank evil void demons moved together. They streaked across the sky, bursting forth with an incomparably astonishing killing intent from 8 directions. They carried an astonishing amount of power and launched a terrifying attack. Earth-shattering. Chapter 1247. Boom. It was as if the sky had collapsed. Chen Zong's figure stopped in an instant, as if he had been suppressed by 8 terrifying mountains. But in the next moment, an extremely shocking aura erupted from Chen Zong's body. It rushed out like a volcanic eruption and shattered the pressure in an instant. At the same time, Chen Zong was also hit by 8 terrifying attacks. His body was shattered in an instant, but it was only a residual shadow. The moment the attacks were about to hit him, Chen Zong had already used 10 shadows and 10 illusions to dodge. Fierce battles could better stimulate one's potential. The effect was more than 10 times better than closed-door cultivation. There were great terrors between life and death, but there were also great opportunities. If one could survive the great terrors, one could further stimulate one's potential. The attacks of the 8 low-level half-saint demons of the void shattered Chen Zong's figure. They also shattered the place where Chen Zong had landed, creating a huge, deep pit. Chen Zong had already appeared in another place and continued to kill the demons of the void. There were too many demons of the void. Only by killing more could he reduce the pressure he had to bear. Circle. Guerrilla warfare. Chen Zong did not fight with the 8 low-level half-saint demons of the void. He constantly used his body movement to dodge and kill the demons of the void who had not reached the half-saint level. After all, if he were to fight against 8 low-level half-saint demons of the void, it would be very disadvantageous for him. He would definitely be stalled and waste his strength for nothing. Only by killing all the other demons of the void and eliminating the threat could he concentrate on dealing with these half-saint demons of the void. This attack came from Chen Zong's back very suddenly. It was silent, like an assassin walking in the dark. This attack was directly out of Chen Zong's expectation. It hit Chen Zong's back. The terrible power instantly tore apart Chen Zong's defense. It hit Chen Zong's body and sent Chen Zong flying forward. In front of him was a beam of black light. It was like a roaring black dragon, and it carried with it a terrifying power. Chen Zong felt a burning pain on his back. The terrible power was constantly eroding his body, as if it wanted to destroy his body wantonly. The attack that was coming at him was the full-strength attack of a low-level half-saint demon. If he was hit, he was sure that his body would be pierced and shattered. A pincer attack from the front and back, a tiger in front and a wolf behind. For a moment, Chen Zong was in a life-or-death crisis. The pressure of life and death made Chen Zong suffocate, but it also stimulated Chen Zong's potential. Using life and death situations to stimulate one's potential wasn't suitable for everyone. Some people didn't have enough potential, and when faced with life and death situations, they would really die. Only those with great potential and temperament were qualified. Chen Zong was one of them. In an instant, Chen Zong's mind became incomparably clear. Everything around him appeared clearly in his mind. Even the floating dust in the air was within Chen Zong's grasp. All kinds of martial arts mysteries emerged one after another. The essence of 10 shadows and 10 illusions body movements and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship intertwined with each other. In an instant, as if some kind of shackle had been broken, an indescribable understanding surged into his mind. Miraculously, Chen Zong's body twisted slightly, and his feet crossed in an instant. Dodge. Chen Zong dodged the powerful attack that came at him head-on. In an instant, his body seemed to have turned into a beam of black sword light, emitting an extremely sharp edge. The golden vertical pupils of the high-level half-saint demon dragon standing above the hall of the city lord's mansion suddenly shrank, as if it had seen something incredible. In its eyes, the human's body seemed to have turned into a black heavy sword. Its power was powerful, overbearing, and its sharpness was unparalleled in the world. In an instant, the sword crossed paths with the low-level half-saint demon of the void. The demon's body suddenly stopped, and a sword mark split open from its waist. Cut at the waist. Chen Zong's expression was cold and solemn. His eyes were cold and indifferent, as if he had lost all his emotions in an instant. There was only coldness and silence. This coldness and silence allowed Chen Zong to control everything around him with great precision. He even combined 10 shadows and 10 illusions body movements and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship. Body movements were body movements, and swordsmanship was swordsmanship. The two were different. Now, under the pressure of a life and death crisis, Chen Zong found a point of convergence between the two. With the Taiyuan king's memory as a reference, he immediately combined them. 1 shadow, 1 illusion, 1 blade, 1 kill. Combining body movements and swordsmanship meant combining the advantages of the two. There was the swiftness and changeability of 10 shadows and 10 illusions body movements, and the sharpness and overbearingness of 10 blades extreme swordsmanship. The moment he dodged the opponent's attack, he achieved an instant counterattack. The feeling of combining body movements and swordsmanship into one was incomparably wonderful and carefree. Kill, kill, kill! Chunzong's body flashed. Instantly, two sword shadows appeared. The sword shadows were pitch black and filled with a majestic aura like a mountain. They also exuded the sharpness of a sword's edge. They seemed to be ever-changing like clouds and mist. Two shadows, two illusions, two blades, and two kills. The power of the purple cloud black star flame spread to his back and purified the corrosive power quickly. The self-healing ability of his strong physique also quickly took effect, healing his injuries quickly. Kill, kill, kill. 3 shadows, 3 illusions, 3 blades, and 3 kills. Every time he used it, more mysteries would appear in his mind, and he would master it further. Gradually, under the threat of death, Chunzong combined 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship. 10 shadows, 10 illusions, 10 blades, and 10 kills. Currently, Chunzong had only mastered the first stage of 10 shadows and 10 illusions, and the first stage of 1000 men extreme swordsmanship, 10 blades extreme swordsmanship. Therefore, he could only combine the first stage. The combination of the first stage could be abbreviated as 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship. When he used 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship, his super spiritual energy was naturally driven. It circulated in his body in a more subtle way, and it gave Chunzong a comfortable and invigorating feeling. His super spiritual energy was constantly being consumed, but it was recovering at an even faster speed. This made Chunzong extremely shocked. Whether it was using 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship or 10 blades extreme swordsmanship, it would obviously consume his super spiritual energy. Although the 6th stage of Taiyuan Cloud Scraping Art recovered his super spiritual energy quickly, it could not keep up with his recovery speed. But now, the unique circulation path of 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship after combining body movements and swordsmanship actually accelerated the recovery of his super spiritual energy, allowing his consumption and recovery to be equal. Because of this, Chunzong subconsciously let out a sigh of relief. After all, if he wanted to kill hundreds of powerful evil void demons, he would have to constantly consume his super spiritual energy. Currently, the pills he had were used to replenish his spiritual energy. It was not that he could not use them to replenish his super spiritual energy, but the effect was relatively weak. If his super spiritual energy was completely consumed, he would not have much strength left, and he would be torn to pieces by these evil void demons in an instant. Therefore, Chunzong had been using guerrilla warfare to reduce the consumption of his super spiritual energy and speed up his recovery. He wanted to use a protracted battle to slowly kill off the evil void demons. But now, his recovery speed could completely keep up with his consumption speed, so he did not have to worry about this. Then, he could kill to his heart's content. 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship was continuously used. Every time he used it, Chunzong had a new understanding, and it became more and more refined. When he used it, 10 figures turned into 10 pitch-black sword lights. They seemed to be drifting around, and no one knew where they would appear. But every time they appeared, they would definitely take away the lives of 10 evil void demons. The evil void demons could not hit Chunzong. Instead, they were continuously killed by Chunzong. Every time he killed 10 evil void demons, the number of evil void demons decreased sharply. This killing efficiency was many times faster than before. It was incomparably carefree to the extreme. This 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme swordsmanship could be said to be the ultimate killing move on the battlefield. Chunzong could not help but have a thought. If he mastered the second stage of 1000 shadows and 1000 illusions and the second stage of 1000 executioners extreme swordsmanship and perfectly combined them to form 1000 shadows and 100 blades extreme swordsmanship, wouldn't his killing speed increase tenfold? On the other hand, if he mastered the third stage of 1000 shadows and 1000 executioners extreme swordsmanship and perfectly combined them to form 1000 shadows and 1000 blades extreme swordsmanship, wouldn't his killing speed skyrocket once again? However, that was only a thought. Wanting to master the 100 Shadows and 100 Blades extreme swordsmanship and 100 Blades extreme swordsmanship as a transcendent was simply too difficult. Not to mention this, just the 10 Shadows and 10 Blades extreme swordsmanship and 100 Blades extreme swordsmanship were things Chen Zong had yet to cultivate to the extreme. The high-level half-saint Void Demon Dragon Man did not show any intention of attacking and instead continued to stare at Chen Zong's every move. His pair of cold and ruthless golden eyes seemed to be observing Chen Zong's every move. Soon after, the high-level half-saint Void Evil Devil Dragon Man opened his mouth and said something. The mid-level half-saint Void Evil Devil Oxen on his left and right moved their heads one after another. They leaped several hundred meters high into the air and fell down like meteors with their heavy axes and heavy hammers. Hong Hong. An extremely terrifying aura exploded and fell from the sky like two huge fireballs. The pressure was so terrifying that it could destroy the heavens and earth. The two extremely terrifying auras instantly locked onto Chen Zong, causing Chen Zong's complexion to change drastically. His originally free and easy movement skill came to a halt in an instant. The pressure brought about by the mid-order half-saint was so strong that it could affect Chen Zong. So far, the strongest opponent Chen Zong had faced was a low-level half-saint. Even the half-saint master who chased after him in the myriad treasures-sealed world was also a low-level half-saint. But now, he could already kill low-level half-saints and was starting to face mid-order half-saint. Next, he would have to face high-level half-saint. Hong Hong. Chen Zong slashed out twice with his sword. Two pitch-black sword lights pierced through the air and instantly disintegrated the extremely heavy pressure. Immediately, Chen Zong performed the 10 Shadows and 10 Blades kill again. Hundreds of void demons died one after another under Chen Zong's heavy dragon sword. So far, more than half of them had died. Of the 8 low-level half-saint void demons, 4 had also been killed. Only 4 remained. But now, the 2 mid-level half-saint void demons had also made their move. In an instant, Chen Zong's 2 pitch-black sword lights were shattered. The 2 mid-order half-saint void demons released an extremely terrifying aura. They fell from the sky and chopped down with their axes. The terrifying pitch-black axe lights seemed to tear the heavens and earth apart. The twin hammers, which were filled with astonishing black light, also emitted a terrifying rumbling sound. They were like meteorites that shattered the heavens and earth. Ordinary low-level half-saint masters couldn't resist such an attack. Even if they didn't die, they would be seriously injured and lose the ability to fight. Chapter 1248. Marquis-grade geniuses could fight against ordinary low-level half-saints with the strength of a transcendent realm cultivator. Monarch-grade geniuses could defeat ordinary low-level half-saints with the strength of a transcendent realm cultivator and contend with masters between low-level half-saints and mid-level half-saint. King-grade geniuses could kill ordinary low-level half-saints with the strength of a transcendent realm cultivator and contend with mid-level half-saint. Chen Zong had passed the king-grade ancient battle steel, so he should be a king-grade genius instead of a monarch-grade genius. Therefore, Chen Zong could kill ordinary low-level half-saints with relative ease. But now there were 2 mid-level half-saints charging at him. The pressure he felt was indescribable. Without hesitation, Chen Zong sheathed the heavy dragon sword and summoned the scarlet flame sword. The power contained in the Scarlet Flame Sword was equivalent to that of an ordinary low-level half-saint. For a mid-level half-saint, ordinary low-level half-saints were nothing, but if he used it, he could become even stronger. Using the Scarlet Flame Sword, Chen Zong's strength would only increase slightly. Kill. With the Crimson Flame Sword in hand, Chen Zong's figure moved around, but he didn't engage the 2 mid-level half-saint void devils. Instead, he engaged in guerrilla warfare, constantly killing other void devils. Except for the 2 mid-level half-saint void devils, The other void devils couldn't withstand a single strike from Chunzong. Even the low-level half-saint void devils couldn't withstand a single strike from Chunzong. The high-level half-saint void demon Dragon Man stared unblinkingly at Chunzong with its golden vertical pupils. Its eyes reflected Chunzong's figure, as if it was absorbing everything about Chunzong. It didn't seem to care about the other void demons being killed. Several hundred void demons died under Chunzong's sword. 8 low-level half-saints also died under Chunzong's sword. As soon as they died, their bodies turned into mist and disappeared. Chunzong officially faced off against the 2 mid-level half-saint void devil oxheads. Boom! The 2 axes hacked down and the earth cracked open. It was as if a huge bolt of lightning was rapidly spreading. The light of the axes was incomparably tyrannical, cutting through everything. Even if there was a huge mountain in front of it, it would still be split apart by the axes. On the other side, the twin hammers smashed down, causing the ground to crumble and collapse. A terrifying power quickly spread out, as if wanting to turn everything into dust. The speed of the 2 mid-level half-saint void demons was not fast, but their strength was terrifying, which made Chunzong extremely fearful. He absolutely could not allow himself to be hit. Otherwise, with his defense, he would not be able to withstand it. A single strike was enough to break through his defense and cause him serious injuries. He might even be killed by a single strike. It was as if he was treading on thin ice, as if he was walking on the tip of a knife. It was extremely dangerous, and this kind of danger further stimulated Chunzong. His hair stood on end, and an electric current flowed through his body, making Chunzong quiver all over. His essence, energy, and spirit became more condensed, and his mind became more concentrated. The high-intensity concentration brought about clearer and more precise changes. Wind force, resistance, angle, trajectory, force, speed, all the information was accurately presented in Chunzong's mind, and was grasped by Chunzong. His body movements became more agile, and his swordsmanship became sharper. Every move was just right, no more, no less, and just enough to avoid the attacks of the strong enemies. It was as if he was walking on the tip of a knife. Every time he attacked, his strength and speed reached the best, and the perfect combination made every sword attack burst out with incomparable power. Extremely precise, extremely mysterious. Chunzong did not know how to describe this indescribable state. He was like a god. Chunzong was less than 2 meters tall. In terms of body size, there was a huge gap between him and the 2 mid-level half-saint void demons, who were 4 meters tall. However, he was extremely agile, shuttling back and forth between the 2 mid-level half-saint void demons, leading their fighting rhythm, restraining each other, and imperceptibly weakening their strength. The 2 demons wanted to separate, but they could not. They wanted to attack Chunzong, but their realms were not as high as Chunzong's, so they could only be led by the nose by Chunzong. 10 blades cutting extremity. Seizing the momentary opportunity, Chunzong swung his sword and chopped at the calf of a mid-level half-saint void demon. The moment the blade hit, Chunzong immediately felt an indescribable hardness. The defensive power was amazing. However, the 10 blades cutting extremity, which was performed by the super-spiritual power of the 6th level of the Taiyuan cloud-scraping technique, was very powerful. It cut off the calf and immediately lost its balance. The sword light of the 10 blades cutting extremity broke through the air. 5 consecutive blades cutting extremity. Under the combination of 5 consecutive sword lights, the mid-level half-saint void demon turned its head, and its strong body was suddenly cut open with irresistible force. The death of a mid-level half-saint void demon greatly reduced the pressure on Chunzong. 1-on-1. Kill. This void demon, which was holding a heavy hammer in each hand, was very powerful. Every strike of the hammer seemed to sink the earth. The terrible power was like a raging wave, and the whole giant city seemed to be shaking. It was very powerful, and the speed at which it swung its hammers was amazing. It hammered wildly like a drum. Every strike of the hammers was aimed at Chen Zong, bursting out with its own terrible power. Every strike of the hammers on the ground burst out with extremely cold, wild ripples that swept out and shattered everything. Although there was only one mid-level half-saint void devil left, and the pressure on Chen Zong had decreased sharply, it was still difficult for Chen Zong to get close to the void devil due to the lack of mutual restraint between the two hammers of the powerful mid-level half-saint void devil. Wandering, constantly wandering, looking for an opportunity. Although the void demon was very powerful, and its body was very strong, there were times when it was exhausted. Taking advantage of the moment when the void demon took a breath, Chen Zong performed the 10 shadows 10 blades killing technique. In the blink of an eye, 10 figures and 10 sword lights appeared around the void fiend. Kill. Although this void demon was powerful, it was no match for Chen Zong. Under the 10 shadows 10 blades killing technique, it was directly cut into pieces by the red flame sword. After killing these two mid-level half-saint void demons, Chen Zong felt a little tired. Tired? It wasn't just physical exhaustion, but also mental exhaustion. First, there were hundreds of evil void devils. Then, there were 8 low-level half-step saint. Then, there were 2 mid-level half-step saint. Such opponents were truly powerful. This battle was really hard. But they were all killed. Only one was left. Chen Zong took a deep breath. His eyes were shining brightly, like a sharp sword piercing the sky. He stared at the figure in front of him in the hall of the city lord's mansion. A high-level half-saint void demon was a great threat to him, just like the demonic dragon man. The high-level half-saint void demon dragon man was motionless, still with its arms crossed in front of its chest. Its pair of golden vertical pupils were extremely cold. It stared at Chen Zong, imperceptibly giving Chen Zong a strong pressure. Serious. Chen Zong was very serious. His expression and eyes were very serious. His strong intuition told him that this high-level void demon was a strong enemy, a very strong enemy, a very strong enemy. Time passed breath by breath. Chen Zong felt that the pressure on him was constantly increasing. This pressure didn't seem to be as great as when he faced the hundreds of void demons, but it was more profound, as if it was directed to the deepest part of his heart. It made Chen Zong's hair stand on end. Slash. The red flame sword streaked across the sky, creating a golden flame sword light. It crossed thousands of meters in an instant and attacked the high-level half-saint void demon dragon man. The void evil devil draconic person lowered his crossed arms, and an extremely terrifying power erupted. Baleful intent soared into the sky, and the instant the scarlet flame's sharp sword neared him, it was as if it was struck by an invisible force, and instantly collapsed and dissipated. The next moment, the void demon dragon man moved, creating countless shadows. It rushed toward Chen Zong at an amazing speed, like a demonic dragon flying in the sky. Lock on. Chen Zong felt that he was locked on. No matter how he dodged, he couldn't avoid the attack of the void demon dragon man. Chen Zong performed 10 shadows and 10 illusions to the extreme, but the feeling of being locked on still existed. He instantly combined it with the 10 blades extreme sword technique. 10 shadows and 10 blades kill. 10 shadows and 10 sword lights rushed toward the void demon dragon man in an instant. This was an extremely powerful move. Perhaps it wasn't as powerful as the 10 blades extreme sword technique, but in terms of subtlety and variation, it was far superior to the 10 blades extreme sword technique. The 10 shadows and 10 sword lights all seemed real, and they all had extremely terrifying lethality. Just now, the mid-level half-saint void demon dragon man had been killed by this move. Then, could this move deal with the high-level half-saint void demon dragon man? Chen Zong didn't know, because the strength difference between a high-level half-saint and a mid-level half-saint was very obvious. Although he didn't know, it didn't stop Chen Zong from drawing his sword. He drew his sword with the strongest conviction, the conviction to kill. Kill. Slash. The moment Chen Zong performed 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme sword technique, the golden vertical pupil of the void demon dragon man seemed to glow. A figure was reflected in the light. The 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme sword technique was exactly the same as Chen Zong's. In the next moment, Chen Zong felt that all 10 swords of his 10 shadows and 10 blades extreme sword technique missed, as if the opponent didn't exist at all. Immediately, Chen Zong's expression changed greatly. He immediately held his sword horizontally in front of him. With a clang, an extremely terrifying force bombarded the sword. The force was incomparably tyrannical, like the direct impact of an ancient giant beast. It was also extremely tricky, like a viper coming out of its hole. The red flame-sharp sword trembled incessantly, as if it was letting out a mournful cry. The sword seemed to be about to break. The extremely terrifying force cracked the web between Chen Zong's thumb and index finger, and the tyrannical force kept penetrating. Chen Zong only felt as if his arm was about to break. The body of the sword smashed towards Chen Zong's chest, crushing his heavy defenses and directly striking his chest. With a bang, like the rumbling of a drum, Chen Zong uncontrollably flew back several hundred meters under the overwhelming and terrifying force. Poochie! He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Chen Zong's face was pale, and his face was full of shock. He was extremely terrified. How could it be? How could it be? The difference in strength was too great. There was no way he could match it at all. The void demon dragon man appeared 100 meters away from Chen Zong. Its arms hung down naturally, and its eyes were still incomparably cold. It stared at Chen Zong with indifference, giving Chen Zong even more terrifying pressure. The blow just now seemed to be a casual one, but it caused Chen Zong significant internal injuries. The terrifying void evil force kept invading his body and wreaking havoc. Chen Zong hurriedly mobilized his strength to block, disperse, and purify it. Chapter 1249. In the depths of the ruined city, the pavilions had collapsed, the ground was broken, and holes were everywhere. A powerful aura spread in all directions. The 2-meter-tall half-saint void evil demonic dragon person's arms hung down naturally, and its fingers were slightly clenched. Its long tail swayed in the air unconsciously, and its pair of golden eyes stared at Chen Zong. It was extremely cold, as if it was a mirror cast from 10,000 years of ice, and Chen Zong was completely reflected in it. Chen Zong's expression was extremely solemn. If the demonic dragon person did not attack, he would not attack either. Instead, he was thinking, recalling the battle just now. The battle just now was very short. In just 3 short breaths, he was hit and injured like lightning. But Chen Zong also discovered some things as he recalled. This discovery made Chen Zong feel horrified. It was as if all his actions were under the control of his opponent. In other words, his opponent seemed to be extremely familiar with him. Any timing, angle, and trajectory of his attacks were all under the control of his opponent. That was why the demonic dragon person could easily avoid his attacks, and then counterattack through his flaws and blind spots. Chen Zong could not believe it, but he had no choice but to believe it. Recalling the details of the battle just now, it was indeed so. Everything about him was under the control of his opponent. At this moment, the demonic dragon person's body swayed slightly. It did not seem to be moving, but it floated up as if it had lost all its weight. It exploded with astonishing speed and directly approached Chen Zong. Chen Zong noticed that when the demonic dragon person approached him, it did not move in a straight line. Instead, it moved left and right at a frightening speed. Every time it moved, it would leave behind a series of afterimages. The afterimages stayed in the air for a long time and did not dissipate. This made the demonic dragon person seem even faster, and it was difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. Chen Zong was a little dazzled. Before he could distinguish clearly, the demonic dragon person had already reached him. It raised one hand and suddenly clawed at him, as if it was tearing through the void. The cold light of the claw left streaks in the air, and it was extremely terrifying. Before the dragon claw arrived, the terrifying killing intent made Chen Zong's hair stand on end. His entire body felt numb, as if he had been electrocuted, and even his reaction was a little slower. This slight difference put Chen Zong in danger all of a sudden. Chen Zong used his 10 Shadows 10 Illusions movement technique to the extreme. It was hard to tell which was real and which was fake. He quickly retreated. The scarlet flame-sharp sword was raised in front of him, like an iron chain crossing a river. As expected, the dragon person evil spirit's dragon claw grabbed at Chen Zong's real body. The claw tore through the air and shattered everything. Its power was terrifying. This claw avoided the defense of the red flame sword and struck Chen Zong's chest directly. Chen Zong's super spiritual energy defense was torn apart, his dragon energy defense was torn apart, and this claw attack even tore open a few deep claw marks on his chest, leaving behind a few bone-deep claw marks. The extremely terrifying evil power of the void continued to corrode Chen Zong's body, wreaking havoc and destroying his life force. The evil power of the void of a high-level half-step Saint Evil Spirit was extremely corrosive. Chen Zong could feel that one side of the claw marks on his chest was gray and black, emitting a deathly aura. His exuberant life force was also affected, constantly being corroded and depleted. The purple cloud black star flame burned fiercely, and the powerful flame energy immediately spread out, destroying and purifying the evil power of the void that had invaded his body. It then went to the claw marks on his chest. As the claw marks burned, the original gray and black deathly aura quickly disappeared and returned to normal. Chen Zong quickly retreated and pulled away from the high-level evil spirit of the void. He stared at his opponent, and his powerful spiritual sense locked onto his opponent. His mind spun rapidly, constantly thinking of countermeasures. This opponent was too terrifying. What was terrifying was not the opponent's strength as a high-level half-step saint, but that the opponent seemed to know everything about him. It was as if the opponent knew him better than he knew himself. Once he made a move, the opponent would know his weakness and counterattack. Chen Zong had never experienced such a feeling before. Usually, only he would let others experience it. Of course, Chen Zong was also very clear about one thing. It was not that he had no weaknesses. It was just that his realm and attainments were so profound that he could minimize his weaknesses and maximize his opponent's weaknesses. Then he could attack, defeat, and kill his opponent. It was the same for the evil spirits of the void before. But now the situation was reversed. Chen Zong was completely in a passive position. A thought suddenly popped up in Chen Zong's mind. He felt that this was not bad. At least he could experience the feeling of being helpless. For him, this was definitely a new experience. It was a new kind of tempering. Perhaps it would play a good role in perfecting his cultivation path. Of course, the premise was that he could survive this battle and kill his opponent. Otherwise, everything would be empty talk. Chen Zong's will to live was very strong, because he knew very well that no matter what, there was only hope if he was alive. If he died, everything would be in vain. Survive first, then find a way to defeat and kill his opponent. Pausing, Chen Zong once again used the 10 Shadows 10 Blades kill, and instantly attacked his opponent. Chen Zong did not know if it was an illusion, but he actually saw a mocking smile flash across the face of the evil dragon person, as if it was mocking Chen Zong. Soon after, the evil dragon person's feet seemed to be rooted to the ground. Its body swayed like a pendulum, and it dodged all of Chen Zong's attacks. It was an understatement and unhurried move. Chen Zong kept attacking, and the speed of his sword became faster and faster. He even sacrificed his strength to increase his speed, as if it was beyond his limit. In just an instant, the evil dragon person was completely covered by the sword light of the red flame sword. However, Chen Zong, who kept attacking, became more and more horrified. Because no matter how fast and dense his attacks were, they could not hit the evil dragon person. As it swayed left and right, it actually dodged all of Chen Zong's attack. It was as if it had the ability to foresee, and could predict the angle and trajectory of Chen Zong's attacks in advance. It even calculated the speed. Foresight? No. Previously, when Chen Zong fought against hundreds of evil void demons, 8 low-level evil void demons, and 2 mid-level evil void demons, everything was seen by this high-level evil void demon. Its extraordinary ability also recorded everything Chen Zong did, analyzing, calculating, and grasping Chen Zong's every move. It sounded horrifying, but that was the truth. It was as if it had grasped all of Chen Zong's movements and reactions. Unless Chen Zong did not move, it could quickly deduce what Chen Zong's next move would be unless Chen Zong did not move. 15 minutes. Chen Zong had been attacking at high speed for 15 minutes, but he could not even touch the corner of the evil dragon person's clothes. The evil dragon person did not counterattack and only stood on the spot, dodging all of Chen Zong's attacks without moving its feet at all. Soon after, the demonic dragon no longer seemed to want to dodge. It raised its hand and lightly flicked its finger. A terrifying force hit the scarlet flame's sword and deflected it. Soon after, the demonic dragon straightened its finger and pierced toward Chen Zong. Chen Zong only felt as if that finger had turned into a giant crossbow that pierced through the sky and arrived with terrifying force. Body-refining dragon power surged, purple cloud black star flame burned, and ultra-spiritual energy surged. In an instant, the 3 energies gathered in Chen Zong's left hand and turned into a sharp sword that pierced through the air with a deafening rumble. The moment the 2 fingers collided, Chen Zong only felt that the power in his sword finger was instantly crushed. An extremely terrifying force hit, and his sword finger seemed to shatter inch by inch. His arm was bent, and his body was pushed back rapidly. However, the void evil devil draconic being wasn't having a good time either. Its elbow was bent uncontrollably, and a powerful force struck its fingertip. A feeling of being crushed spread through its body, causing its expression to change slightly. Chen Zong saw all of the other party's reactions. So it's not much stronger than me. A trace of understanding welled up in his mind. The high-level half-saint evil dragon person was very strong, but Chen Zong found that it was not much stronger than him in a head-on clash. The reason why it could injure him was because it could see through all of his moves and seemed to be in control of the battle. Then, if he wanted to break out of this situation, he had to change. How to change? He had to change himself. However, changing was easier said than done. Chen Zong's battle techniques and so on were gradually formed over the past few decades. It was impossible to change them just like that. The evil dragon person seemed to have also tested the difference in power between itself and Chen Zong. It attacked again, and its claw tore through the air. Chen Zong also tried to change, and blocked the claw. However, the tail suddenly whipped, and a terrifying force that seemed to be able to shatter mountains directly hit Chen Zong's back. It shattered all of Chen Zong's defenses, and it seemed to want to shatter Chen Zong's body. Chen Zong could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He felt a burning pain on his back, as if it had been shattered. The extremely terrifying evil force of the void once again invaded his body and wreaked havoc. The demonic dragon crossed its arms in front of its chest again, but one of its tails was constantly changing, lashing out like a giant whip. It could change its length freely, and it seemed to be able to appear anywhere on its body. It was like a venomous snake or a giant python, agile, cunning, and ferocious. Every time it lashed out, it would burst forth with astonishing power. Boom, boom, boom. Chen Zong directly lost the ability to resist. His entire body kept trembling, and he allowed the evil dragon person's tail to whip him. Every time it whipped, a terrifying force would blast into his body, wantonly destroying Chen Zong's body. Every time it whipped, Chen Zong would spit out a mouthful of blood, and his face would become paler and paler. His aura would also become weaker and weaker. However, every time it whipped, Chen Zong's eyes would become brighter and brighter. They were extremely bright, like divine light. Wisps of aura quietly changed, imperceptibly, like a frog being boiled in warm water. Even the dragon person evil spirit did not notice it at all. It seemed to be having a lot of fun, playing to its heart's content. This evil dragon person clearly possessed astonishing intelligence and vile habit. It clearly had the ability to kill Chen Zong, but it did not kill Chen Zong. Instead, it constantly attacked and ravaged Chen Zong. Chapter 1250. Bang, bang, bang. A rhythmic sound that sounded like the beating of a drum reverberated in all directions. The Dragonborn's tail was neither light nor heavy, and it kept whipping Chen Zong's body at a uniform speed. Chen Zong's front and back were attacked again and again, and the Dragonborn seemed to be playing with him, whipping Chen Zong from head to toe. Although each strike was not the strongest, it was not light either. It was as if it was going to break Chen Zong's bones and tendons. If not for Chen Zong's strong physique, he would have been turned into a pile of minced meat. Intense pain. Every whip would bring intense pain to his body. Before the first wave subsided, another wave would come. It kept stacking and accumulating, becoming more and more intense. But gradually, Chen Zong forgot about the intense pain in his body. Countless insights appeared. Since birth, he was born weak and was regarded as a useless person. It was difficult for him to cultivate. He was ridiculed countless times, but he never gave up on himself. He always remembered his father's teachings, constantly strived to improve oneself. After obtaining the Heart Sword seal, he was reborn. From then on, he truly stepped onto the path of cultivation. He constantly sharpened himself, encountered life and death crises, and survived them. He stimulated his potential time and time again to improve himself. Step by step, he walked to where he was now. Difficult times, alternating between life and death, when had his heart ever wavered? Opportunities, traveling between two worlds, when had his heart ever wavered? One soul lives two worlds, one heart illuminates 10,000 worlds. Chen Zong could not help but say softly. It was the voice from the deepest part of his heart. Suddenly, the Heart Sword seal trembled slightly, and the mysteries of the Heart Sword Sutra flowed out. It filled Chen Zong's soul. The runes emitted a silver divine light, filled with endless mysteries. In an instant, mysteries that he had never comprehended before appeared one after another. Heart, Chen Zong said in a low voice. It was like the voice of his soul. Only he could hear it. The demonic dragon did not react at all. It continued whipping Chen Zong's body. Countless comprehensions emerged. Spiritual lights danced in the depths of his soul like fireflies, parting the dark clouds to reveal the bright moon. His heart was clear, his thoughts were clear, and he was suddenly enlightened. Heart Sword Sutra. First the heart, then the sword. Once he had an epiphany, the mysteries were revealed. Only then did Chen Zong realize that there seemed to be some deviation in his previous comprehension. First comes the heart, then the sword. The heart was the main, and the sword was the auxiliary, with the heart as the inside and the sword as the outside, with the heart as the root and the sword as the leaf. If the heart sword was a big tree, then the heart would be the roots and the sword would be the branches and leaves. Having a heart without a sword was like having roots without branches and leaves, unable to grow upwards and become a towering tree. Having a sword without a heart was like having branches and leaves without a root. Without the support of the root, the branches and leaves would wither and disappear. In other words, his comprehension of the Heart Sword Sutra wasn't off at all. It was just that he hadn't gone deep enough. No matter how many stages he had comprehended the Heart Sword Sutra at that time, it had always been on the surface. He hadn't grasped the true mysteries. But now, with a deeper foundation, a stronger soul and comprehension, and the partial memories and cultivation insights of the great Abyss King, a peak Saint Rudiment stage master, he had greatly strengthened his foundation. Facing such an unprecedented life and death crisis, his body was severely injured and on the verge of death. In this moment of life and death, he had greatly stimulated his potential. Life and death crises were terrifying, but they were also great opportunities. Chernzong had grasped this great opportunity. It was a great opportunity that belonged to him. He had comprehended the deeper mysteries of the Heart Sword Sutra. This was the true mystery of the Heart Sword Sutra. If not for this, who knew how long it would have taken Chernzong to comprehend this? The moment he comprehended the mysteries of the Heart Sword, Chernzong's body suddenly exuded a unique aura. This aura was very weak, like a candle in the wind, about to be extinguished at any moment. However, it was like a sprout that had sprouted out of the ground, absorbing nutrients and gradually growing. It was incomparably tenacious. As this aura grew stronger, the demonic dragon man seemed to realize that something was wrong. Its golden vertical pupils suddenly burst out with an astonishing cold murderous intent. The whipping of its tail suddenly intensified, its power increasing to the extreme. It was as if it could crush a mountain with one blow as it slammed towards Chernzong. The power of this blow was more than twice as strong as before. It was enough to directly blow up Chernzong's severely injured body. With a boom, the air trembled incessantly. The extremely terrifying force turned into a seething shock wave that shattered Chernzong's body. The shock wave even sent him flying backward, creating a ravine that was several thousand meters long on the broken ground. It was a ghastly sight. However, the demonic dragonman's golden pupils revealed a hint of human-like seriousness. That powerful full-force blow just now had not actually hit the opponent's body. The moment it hit, the opponent's body disappeared, leaving behind only a lifelike phantom. How did he disappear? It could not figure it out. Logically speaking, all of this human's combat and movements were already under its control. As long as he moved, it could deduce his next move and attack. How could it not be able to deduce his next move? Little did it know that Chernzong had comprehended the true mysteries of the Heart Sword Sutra, the mysteries of the Heart Sword. The mysteries of the Heart Sword were to use the heart as the root, the heart as the master, and the heart as the source to control the sword and control all power. Chernzong felt that he seemed to have come into contact with a more profound path of cultivation. However, he did not understand it well enough and was in a hazy state. It seemed that he had only scratched the surface and had not even reached the threshold of mastery. However, just the slightest contact was enough to change Chernzong greatly. With a thought, he dodged the powerful attack of the Draconid sinister demon without a trace. If it was before, he would definitely not have been able to dodge that blow. He would have been hit, his body would have shattered, and he would have died a violent death. He quickly took out an elixir and consumed it to heal his injuries. Heavy, extremely heavy. Almost all of his bones and muscles were shattered. His skin and muscles were also shattered. His flesh was badly mangled. If not for Chernzong's strong will and comprehension of the mysteries of the Heart Sword, he would not have been able to hold on. As the elixir's power quickly dissolved, a cold aura spread throughout his body and gradually healed his injuries. These injuries were not light at all compared to the injuries he had suffered from the great Abyss King's finger. Of course, there were differences between the two. The great Abyss King had inflicted severe injuries on Chernzong with a single finger. That finger was extremely brilliant. However, this demonic dragon man had attacked many times and was somewhat different. In any case, it was a fact that Chernzong's injuries were very serious. The demonic dragon man seemed to be enraged. It let out a shocking and sharp roar. It reached out with its claws and tore open cracks in space. It grabbed pieces of debris and lashed out wildly with its tail. It was incomparably violent and destroyed everything. Faced with the demonic dragonman's destructive power, Chern Zong had no intention of taking it head-on. After all, his injuries were very serious. He dodged and escaped. Under the mysteries of the Heart Sword, everything within a radius of several meters was within Chern Zong's grasp. His 10 shadows, 10 illusions became even more erratic, breaking away from the Dragonborn's predictions. Even Chern Zong himself could not predict where he would go next. He could only follow the feeling in the depths of his heart and guide it in the correct direction. This feeling was a bit like the Heartless Sword, but the mysteries contained within it were even more brilliant. However, due to his serious injuries, Chern Zong would suffer intense pain every time he used his movement technique. Fortunately, the effects of the pill continued to spread and reduce Chern Zong's pain. It also allowed Chern Zong's injuries to heal bit by bit. The self-healing ability of his physique also gradually took effect and accelerated the healing of his injuries. Chern Zong used his movement technique to the extreme. He circled around the entire giant city and dodged the attacks of the demonic dragon man. The demonic dragon man attacked wildly as if it had endless energy. The giant city, which was already in ruins, was further damaged by this terrifying attack. Time passed slowly. In the beginning, Chern Zong was almost hit by the demonic dragon man several times. However, as he became more proficient in using the mysteries of the Heart Sword, the demonic dragon man could not do anything to Chern Zong. 30%. Chern Zong's eyes flashed. 30% of his injuries had already healed. Although he was still in pain, he was already able to fight. While he was recovering, the demonic dragon man kept attacking and its energy was constantly being depleted. Although the demonic space demons in the illusory battle were not real demonic space demons, they were all created by the Aeon Ice Empress based on the real demonic space demons. They were very close to the real demonic space demons. As such, although these demonic space demons were very powerful, they were not endless. Especially when this demonic space demon attacked in rage, its energy was being depleted even faster. Wait. Chern Zong continued to wait, waiting for the demonic space demon's energy to be depleted even more. After 40% of its injuries had healed, the demonic dragonman's energy was being depleted even more. The mysteries of the Heart Sword made Chern Zong's powerful spiritual sense sharper. He began to sense that the demonic dragonman's aura was weakening. After 50% of its injuries had healed, the demonic dragonman suddenly calmed down. It also realized that it had used up a lot of its energy. Celestial Crystal Battle Body. In an instant, Chern Zong unleashed the entry-level 7th grade secret technique. White crystal light filled his arms, making them even more powerful. The red flame sword pierced through the air. 10 shadows, 10 blades kill. Under the mysteries of the Heart Sword, the 10 shadows, 10 blades kill became more and more unpredictable and fierce. Moreover, the 10 shadows, 10 blades kill did not appear at the same time like before. Instead, they appeared one at a time and attacked the demonic dragon man. The demonic dragon man immediately dodged. Then, a second figure appeared with a sword and attacked, as if it had predicted the demonic dragonman's dodging route. The demonic dragon man was shocked. It immediately attacked, gathering what little energy it had left to attack. The third figure brandished his sword and attacked again. As expected of a high-level half-saint demonic space demon, it was indeed very powerful. Under the more flexible 10 shadows 10 blades kill, it still could not be killed. However, Chern Zong attacked with a second move. 10 blades slash. 2 blades become 1. As he attacked, the 2 sword lights merged into one. Its power was greatly increased, and it appeared right in the demonic dragonman's path. It could not be dodged. In the past, even though Chern Zong knew the secret behind 10 blades returning to 1, he was unable to execute it. But now, with the help of the Heart Sword, he was able to use his heart as the foundation to control all energy. He was able to execute the 10 blades returning to 1 dual blades returning to 1. 2 blades become 1, and the two sword lights merged into one. Its power was greatly increased. The shocking sword light tore through the air and clashed with the demonic dragonman's claws. Chapter 1251. The sword light tore through the sky, and the sword mark lingered for a long time. The demonic dragon's cold and emotionless eyes were filled with disbelief, as if it couldn't believe that it had been slain. 1/2 slashes. The demonic dragon's body turned into mist and disappeared with extreme reluctance. Given its strength, it should have been the one to kill this human instead. However, what in the world happened in between that caused this human to change and break free from its control? Then, it slowly tortured itself to death. Yes, this demonic dragon of the void with the strength of an advanced half-saint was slowly tortured to death by Chen Zong. In terms of absolute strength, Chen Zong was indeed inferior to this demonic dragon of the void. He couldn't gain the upper hand in a head-on clash, and might even be killed by it. But Chen Zong, who had comprehended the mystery of the heart sword, could more accurately control his strength and control the sword in his hand, allowing him to exert 20% of his strength. More importantly, he could sense everything within a radius of a few meters around him, as if everything was under his control. Using his heart to sense, he was more sensitive than before, and could more accurately sense his opponent's every move. Especially after familiarizing himself with his opponent's fighting style, he could make accurate predictions. Because of this, Chen Zong changed his fighting style from before, and became truly carefree. He couldn't even predict his own consciousness, let alone his opponent. The opponent could predict his movements completely because it was constantly observing his battles, memorizing and grasping his every move, and then deducing and predicting it with its superior ability. This was a kind of innate ability, an amazing ability that only a few demonic dragons of the void possessed. Chen Zong's heart sword was similar, but also different. Chen Zong's wasn't a prediction, but a perception. It wasn't an innate ability, but a superior realm. It was a unique superior realm, an ability that evolved from a superior realm, and not an innate ability. Compared to the advanced half-saint demonic dragon of the void, Chen Zong was still inferior in terms of absolute strength, so he had to go through a tough battle to kill his opponent. If his opponent hadn't used up too much of his strength, this battle would probably have continued. Difficult. This battle was truly difficult. It was different from the battle of the great Abyss King's consciousness, but it was also similar. After entering the Ice Empress' secret realm, Chen Zong had experienced two setbacks that he had never experienced before. The first one was the great Abyss King, and the second one was the evil devil dragon man of the void, a high-level half-saint. The feeling of powerlessness and helplessness went straight into the depths of his heart and soul. That kind of feeling was enough to make many people's minds collapse, but Chen Zong withstood it. As a result, his mind was naturally tempered by an invisible force, becoming purer and tougher. It was precisely this sort of formless tempering combined with everything else that allowed Chen Zong's potential to erupt in the face of a life-and-death crisis, allowing him to comprehend the deeper profundities of the Heart Sword Sutra. A surge of power descended from the sky and landed on Chen Zong's body. Instantly, Chen Zong felt that his injuries were healing rapidly, and the power he had consumed was also recovering rapidly. An incomparably wonderful and comfortable feeling spread throughout his body and soul. His mind was clear, and Chen Zong continued to think. Firstly, the profundities of the heart sword are only superficial. If the opponent's level is the same or slightly higher than mine, it will be useful. But if the opponent's level is much higher than mine, it will be useless, Chen Zong thought. If the opponent's level was lower than his, needless to say, he could easily kill them without using the heart sword's profundities. Secondly, using the heart sword's profundities is very taxing on the mind. Unless the opponent is a powerful one, I can only use it. The profundities of the heart sword were only superficial. When Chen Zong used it to cover an area of several meters around him, the consumption of his mind's power was extremely terrifying. This was something that Chen Zong had experienced when he was fighting the evil devil Dragon Man. Chen Zong guessed that perhaps it was because his level was too low, and the heart sword's profundities were too high. If his cultivation was high enough and his profundities were high enough, then using the heart sword's profundities would not consume so much energy. However, the heart sword's profundities could also be used as a secret technique. It could be used as a trump card or a trump card. Not long after, the power that covered his body disappeared. Chen Zong only felt refreshed and comfortable. All his injuries were healed, and his spirit was restored to its peak. Not only that, but Chen Zong could also feel that some of the hidden injuries that he had left behind in the past were also healed. Every cultivator would experience life and death as they cultivated and fought. They would be injured again and again. Even if they were healed, there would still be some hidden injuries left behind. However, when the hidden injuries accumulated until they reached a limit, it would be very terrifying. Therefore, many cultivators would try their best to get rid of their hidden injuries after reaching a certain level of cultivation. Now, Chen Zong's hidden injuries were all healed. This was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise. Could this be the reward for passing the evil devil illusory battle? Chen Zong could not help but guess. In fact, passing the evil devil illusory battle had brought great benefits to Chen Zong, especially comprehending the heart sword's profundities. No, it was not appropriate to call it the heart sword's profundities. Perhaps it should be called the heart domain. With a unique power, let's call it the heart's force or the heart sword's force. This was a unique power that was different from spiritual power, dragon power, and even spiritual sense. It came from the heart and covered a radius of several meters. It was like a domain that was under one's control. Therefore, it was more appropriate to call it the heart domain. As soon as the heart domain was released, everything within a radius of about 3 meters became extremely clear. The floating dust, the flow of air, and the changes of particles were all under Chen Zong's control. All changes were also within his perception. This was something that his eyesight and spiritual sense could not compare to. Comprehending and mastering the heart domain alone was more than any other reward. Moreover, all the hidden injuries could be healed. At this moment, something strange happened. A blood-red light suddenly appeared in the distant western sky and turned into a blood-red meteor. It swept across the sky like a blood-red aurora and flew straight toward the huge ruined city. A shocking smell of blood permeated the air. The blood-red light was like a turbulent sea of clouds, sweeping over the mountains and overturning the seas. Chen Zong's expression suddenly changed. His eyes emitted a shocking light as he stared at the blood-red light. The blood-red light was endless, carrying a terrifying blood-red aura and sharpness. It was like a blood-red sword that cut across the sky and separated heaven and earth. The shocking blood-red aura and sharpness hit Chen Zong, causing Chen Zong's body to tremble. His whole body was icy cold. An indescribable feeling of paralysis spread all over his body, making him unable to move. Immediately, Chen Zong felt the blood-red light spread into his sea of consciousness and dyed it red. The blood-red light was so dense that it seemed to have turned into a sea of blood that was surging endlessly. It was about to fill Chen Zong's sea of consciousness and shatter it. Even Chen Zong's soul was about to be submerged and devoured, falling into the sea of blood forever. Condense! With a low growl, Chen Zongzhang's heart was not shaken. His extremely tough spirit and willpower, which had recovered to the peak, burst out. It was extremely condensed, like a sword that had just been sharpened, shooting out a shockingly sharp light. Resist. Resist the invasion of the blood-red light. The next moment, like an illusion, the blood-red light in his sea of consciousness disappeared, and the blood-red light that covered half of the sky gradually dissipated. A blood-red mark floated in front of Chen Zong. The mark was as red as blood and crystal clear. It was about the size of a baby's palm, and its shape was like a broad sword blade. Looking at it carefully, it seemed to be formed by countless blood-red sword chi intertwining and rotating. What is this? Chen Zong stared at the blood-red sword seal that was rotating in front of him with a face full of astonishment. All the aura of the blood-red sword seal was restrained, but Chen Zong would never forget the scene just now. The magnificent and amazing power was extremely terrifying, and it was many times more powerful than the evil demon of the void in the high-level half-saint realm. The two were definitely not on the same level. Chen Zong stretched out his hand and gently touched the blood-red sword seal. Suddenly, the blood-red sword seal shone and wrapped around Chen Zong's finger. It spread to the back of Chen Zong's right hand at lightning speed, forming a brand. The brand's shape was exactly the same as the blood-red sword seal, and a message also spread into Chen Zong's mind. The blood-drop sword seal. This object was called the blood-drop sword seal, and it was a secret treasure. Soon, Chen Zong knew the function of this blood-drop sword seal. It was sealed with the blood-drop swordsmanship, an upper-grade sacred-level martial skill. Chen Zong only needed to activate it with his own strength to release the blood-drop swordsmanship sealed in it to kill the enemy. Upper-grade sacred-level swordsmanship. Chen Zong was shocked. Although he had practiced the upper-grade sacred-level cultivation method, his martial skill was only the lower-grade sacred-level sword technique, and he had only practiced it to the first level. As for the upper-grade sacred-level swordsmanship, it was needless to say. If he did not have the right opportunity, he would not know how to practice it, let alone master it. The blood-drop swordsmanship sealed in the blood-drop sword seal could be performed with his own strength. It was the kind of swordsmanship that had been practiced to the perfection, and only lacked the comprehension of the true meaning. Of course, limited by his own strength, he could not fully exert the power of the blood-drop swordsmanship. After all, the power of a sacred-level martial skill could only be fully exerted by saint energy. Even so, the upper-grade sacred-level swordsmanship of the perfection level that was performed with ultra-spiritual energy was extremely powerful and terrifying. Chen Zong really wanted to try the power of the upper-grade sacred-level swordsmanship that had been practiced to the perfection level, but he could only suppress this thought. According to the message sent by the blood-drop sword seal, the power of the blood-drop sword seal would be consumed every time it was activated. It would be consumed every time it was used, and it would vanish into thin air. Therefore, every opportunity to use it was very precious, and it could only be used as a trump card. However, the blood-drop sword seal has another function, and that is to allow me to comprehend the blood-drop swordsmanship sealed in it. Chen Zong thought to himself, and his eyes were extremely bright. An upper-grade sacred-level swordsmanship was undoubtedly very attractive, and it was several times more attractive than the Taiyuan Cloud Shattering Finger, which was also an upper-grade sacred-level swordsmanship. Therefore, Chen Zong practiced swordsmanship. Then, I'll try to comprehend it, Chen Zong thought to himself, and he sank into the blood-drop sword seal on the back of his right hand and began to comprehend it. After a while, Chen Zong's face turned pale, and his eyes were filled with fatigue. Difficult. Too difficult. Chapter 1252. The Eternal Ice Imperial Palace was huge and stood in the depths of the Ice Imperial Mystic Realm. Strong snowstorms raged around it like a natural moat. Those who were not strong enough could only look at it and sigh. However, everyone who entered the Ice Imperial Mystic Realm had their own fortuitous encounters and increased their strength. Hence, those who could not enter the Ice Imperial Palace were in the minority. Only by passing the various tests of the Ice Imperial Palace could one step into the real Ice Imperial Palace. The tests were all the same. As long as one had a certain level of strength and made the right choice, one could pass the test. Of course, if one did not know his own strength and made the wrong choice, he would die here. There was only one person like Chen Zong who did not choose to leave after killing 10 void demons in the illusory battle. That person was Chen Zong. Even the Eclipse King chose to leave after killing 10 void demons. Of course, if the Eclipse King knew that he could obtain a treasure like the blood-dripping sword seal by staying and killing the void demons, he would probably choose to stay. Unfortunately, he did not know. He did not have Chen Zong's senses. After all, their cultivation methods were different. After leaving the illusory battle, Chen Zong finally stepped into the Ice Imperial Palace. Standing on the stone slab of the Ice Imperial Palace, Chen Zong sorted out the information he had just received. The information was simple. First, the Ice Imperial Palace had 3 levels. Each level had its own fortuitous encounter. Second, everyone who entered the Ice Imperial Palace only had one choice. What fortuitous encounter one could obtain depended on one's choice. Third, the first level had the most fortuitous encounters but also the lowest. They were left behind by the stronger Saint Realm martial artists. The second level had fewer fortuitous encounters but stronger ones. They were left behind by king-ranked martial artists. The third level had the least fortuitous encounters but also the strongest ones. They were left behind by great Saint Realm martial artists. Fourth, no matter what fortuitous encounter one chose, one had to pass the test of the person who left behind the fortuitous encounter. Fifth, the first level was the easiest. To enter the second level, one had to break through the barrier. The barrier to the third level was even stronger. There was not much information. After Chen Zong quickly sorted it out, he stepped forward. Beneath his feet was still an ice tunnel. It seemed to be an extension of the ice tunnel from before. Forward. With one step, Chen Zong arrived at a spacious hall. There were 99 stone tablets in the hall, and they were arranged in an orderly manner. They were divided into 11 rows and 9 rows, and the distance between each stone tablet was 100 meters. There were some figures sitting or standing cross-legged in front of some of the stone tablet. They were enveloped by the aura of the stone tablets, as if they had temporarily become one with the stone tablets. Those people were accepting the opportunities inside the stone tablet. After choosing the opportunity, one would have to accept the appropriate test to truly obtain the opportunity. As such, it would be extremely difficult to obtain the opportunity in the Ice Imperial Palace. Test after test, but it was also because of this that the true inheritor could be selected and the inheritance could be carried forward. Chen Zong did not stay on the first level for long. Although the opportunities on the first level were good and would cause a bloodbath in the outside world, they were only of the lowest level here. Chen Zong did not care for them. Looking past the 99 stone tablets, he saw a flowing light screen. That was the barrier to the second level. He took a step forward. Like a gentle breeze, he was as fast as lightning. In an instant, he crossed thousands of meters and appeared in front of the barrier. He did not draw his sword, but used his finger instead of a sword to attack. The sword light was highly condensed and emitted a cloud-white brilliance that was as deep as the abyss. It tore through the sky. In the illusory battle of demons, the flow of time was the same as the outside world. In other words, Chen Zong spent a very long time in the illusory battle of demons, 10 times or even 100 times more than the others. While Chen Zong was still fighting with the demons of the void, other geniuses had already chosen their inheritors and entered the second and third level. If he had multiple chances to choose, Chen Zong would naturally choose from the first level before entering the second or third level. After all, the more choices he could make, the more reference he could get, and the better his foundation would be. However, it was a pity that he only had one chance. This was also a rule set by the ancient Ice Emperor to prevent the geniuses from biting off more than they could chew. It was also a formless test to see if one could choose the most suitable opportunity. Many times, on the path of cultivation, it was not better to be more skillful. Instead, it was better to be more suitable. This was because the more skillful one was, the more likely it was that it would not be suitable. If it was not suitable, no matter how skillful one would not be able to achieve much and waste time. Perhaps it was not that skillful, but it was very suitable for one. Then, one would be able to completely master it and reach new height. What was suitable for oneself was the strongest. The sword light slashed down, and the barrier was silently torn apart in an instant. This barrier was indeed very strong. If one did not have the battle strength of a marquis-ranked genius, one would not be able to break through it. Chernzong, on the other hand, was far more powerful than a marquis-ranked genius. Even if he did not draw his sword, he was still stronger than a marquis-ranked genius. As the barrier was torn apart, an opening appeared. Chernzong's body flashed, and like a sword light, he leaped into the opening and disappeared. The second level was about the same size as the first level. However, there were even fewer stone tablets. There were only 33 of them. Each stone tablet represented a king-ranked formidable martial artist's legacy. The legacies in the Ice Imperial Palace all came from the formidable martial artists who had fought in the ancient battle. Most of them had already fallen. Of course, many years had passed since the ancient battle. The formidable martial artists from that battle had either died on the spot or were severely injured. Although it was said that the higher a cultivator's cultivation level, the longer their lifespan would be, that was only in theory. It was the lifespan that one could live peacefully without fighting or getting injured. Fighting would deplete one's lifespan. Getting injured would deplete one's lifespan even more. Of course, such depletion was almost undetectable. Only when one's injuries were too severe and could not be healed would it truly show itself. Hidden injuries would also affect one's lifespan. When hidden injuries were healed, the depletion of one's lifespan would also be reduced. It had been too long since the ancient battle. Severely injured saints would not be able to hold on at all. They would either die completely or, like the great Abyss King, would remain as a remnant soul with a consciousness. There were 33 legacy stone tablets on the second level. They belonged to the king-ranked formidable martial artists. Chernzong was a little tempted, but only a little. Since he was a little tempted, Chernzong was not in a hurry to enter the third level. Instead, he slowly walked past each stone tablet. Immediately, Chernzong saw senior sister Yunyanshin's figure. At once, he smiled and subconsciously heaved a sigh of relief. When they had separated earlier, Chernzong could not help but worry. Now that he saw senior sister Yu, he finally felt at ease. However, where was senior brother Fu Yunxiao? He did not see him on the first level or the second level. Did he not enter the Ice Imperial Palace? Or was there some other reason? Everyone had their own fate. Whether they lived or died, they had their own control. There was no point in worrying. Chernzong did not disturb Yunyanshin. At this moment, Yunyanshin's aura had merged with the stone tablet. It was as if she was accepting the legacy within. He quickly walked past the stone tablets and carefully sensed their auras. Out of the 33 stone tablets, only 9 of them had been chosen for the legacy. Other than Yunyanshin, Chernzong also saw Huangfu Feihuang and Gu Jianxie. He also saw the chief disciple of Taiyan Mountain's outer sect and mysterious Heaven Ancient Palace's outer sect. The other 4 were very unfamiliar. They should be geniuses from Tianyuan sacred region. Other than the 9 stone tablets that were being chosen for the legacy, among the 24 stone tablets, Chernzong felt that 3 of them were suitable for him to inherit. One was filled with the aura of sword wei, one was filled with the aura of body refining, and the last one was filled with the aura of blazing flames. Let's go to the third level first. With that thought, Chernzong's figure flashed. He appeared in front of the barrier from the second level to the third level and slashed out again. The cloud-white sword light was extremely compressed and condensed. It slashed out like a sword of light. Whoosh! The barrier actually blocked Chernzong's attack. With no other choice, Chernzong pulled out the heavy dragon sword and slashed out again. This time, a hole was torn in the barrier. Chernzong stepped into it. The third level was completely different from the first level. It was not as big, and there were not as many stone tablets. There were only 4 of them. Each of the 4 stone tablets was 100 meters tall. They were distributed in 4 different directions. A person sat cross-legged under one of the stone tablets. His entire body was filled with astonishing aura. At a glance, it was as if there was a black and red sun around him. This person was accepting the legacy. Chernzong stared at him and narrowed his eyes. A king-level genius. He sounded certain. This person must be a king-level genius from Tianyuan sacred region. Chernzong withdrew his gaze. It did not matter if this person was a king-level genius or not, or if he was from Tianyuan sacred region. He did not intend to pay attention to him. His gaze shifted to the other 3 stone tablets that had not been sent out. He carefully observed and sensed the aura fluctuations. The legacy left behind by each stone tablet had its own unique aura. Only by eliminating all distracting thoughts and carefully sensing with one's heart could one determine whether the legacy was truly suitable for oneself. On the path of cultivation, it was best if it was suitable for oneself. The 400-meter-tall black stone tablets were all left behind by Great Saint Expert. As for whether they had died, Chernzong did not know. After all, Great Saint Experts were extremely powerful. Their lifespans were even more astonishing. They could almost live as long as the heavens and earth. Even if they were seriously injured, they could still survive. Chernzong could clearly sense the aura of the other 3 stone tablets, except for the one that was suspected to be the legacy of a king-level genius from Tianyuan sacred region. One of the stone tablets exuded a bone-chilling aura. It was as if it could freeze everything, freeze the heavens and earth, and even freeze time and space. Chernzong guessed that it might be the legacy left behind by the eternal glacial emperor. Indeed, it was the legacy left behind by the eternal glacial emperor. However, this legacy was not suitable for King Eclipse, so he did not choose it. It was also not suitable for Chernzong, so Chernzong did not choose it either. The other stone tablet exuded an aura fluctuation that was extremely vigorous and heavy. It was as heavy as the earth and could carry everything. This aura fluctuation also showed that this legacy was not suitable for Chernzong. Therefore, Chernzong did not choose it. King Eclipse also did not choose this legacy. Chapter 1253. The last steel carried Chernzong's expectations and hope. The aura of Sword Wei. The suffocating aura of Sword Wei made Chernzong happy. He practiced the sword and was destined to walk the path of Sword Wei. All other ways of cultivation were auxiliary. They were to help him become stronger, to help him live a better life, and to pursue the path of Sword Wei with his living body. That was all. His life was a sword, and it would not change until he died. Without hesitation, Chernzong stepped forward and stood in front of the steel that emitted the aura of Sword Wei. This aura gave Chernzong a familiar feeling, as if he had felt it somewhere before. Of course, this was the legacy left behind by an expert of the Sword Wei in the antiquity times. Chernzong was not from the antiquity times, so it was impossible for him to have come into contact with it. However, King Taiyuan was from the antiquity times. This aura of Sword Wei immediately reminded Chernzong of the expert of Sword Wei in King Taiyuan's memory. With a swing of his sword, the sword light traversed 30,000 miles and killed countless demons of the void of the Saint Realm. With a sword in hand, he was invincible. How yearning! Chernzong straightened his back like a sword. An astonishing sharpness suddenly emanated from his body and soared into the sky. In an instant it came into contact with the aura of the inheritance steel. The sharpness of the sword seemed to come from the same source. They immediately merged into one, and there was no distinction between them. All the distracting thoughts in Chen Zong's mind disappeared in an instant. They became incomparably pure, like the brilliance of a sword that spread and illuminated the world. The steel in front of him also dissolved in an instant and quickly spread out, as if it had turned into a world. Mountains and rivers rose from the ground and swept out in all directions. In an instant, a world spread out in front of him like a picture scroll. Great rivers and mountains were in front of him. The gigantic tree towered into the sky like a giant pillar supporting the heavens. Chen Zong was shocked. He had never seen such a scene before. It seemed that such gigantic trees could only be found in the primeval forests where people rarely tread. They were hundreds or even thousands of meters tall. The air was filled with traces of the aura of the ancient times. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it was a real world. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as Chen Zong was looking around, a series of buzzing sounds came from all directions. It seemed to come from the vastness of the heavens, and also seemed to spread out from the deepest part of his heart. In the next moment, endless sword light seemed to break out from the ground, yet it also seemed to come from the endless sky. The sword light was like waves, endless and boundless. The extreme majesty and sharpness seemed to want to drown the heavens and the earth, as well as Chen Zong. In front of this vast and endless sword light, Chen Zong felt that he was as insignificant as a speck of dust and an ant. It was as if he had been suppressed and imprisoned, unable to move. Even his thoughts seemed to have been frozen. He could only watch as the endless sword light approached. In the next moment, his body would be blasted into pieces by the sword light, causing his soul to disperse and vanish completely from the heavens and the earth. In an instant, Chen Zong forgot everything else, including the fact that he was here to receive the inheritance. All he could feel was the threat of death looming over him once again. It was more intense than when he was facing the great Abyss King, and more ferocious than when he faced the high-level half-saint void evil dragon man in the illusory battle of demons. Even his thoughts were almost frozen. He had no power to resist and could only wait for death. No! Subconsciously, Chen Zong let out an angry roar. The dawn of sword principle was right in front of him. How could he die here? Not allowed, not allowed, absolutely not allowed. I still want to reach the peak of sword principle and step onto the other shore of sword principle. I want to see the scenery of the peak and understand the profundity of the other shore. The desire and persistence in the deepest part of his subconscious burst out in an instant. The sword radiance in Chen Zong's eyes was extremely dense, and an incomparably strong aura seemed to condense and soar into the sky. At the same time, the endless and incomparably sharp sword radiance rushed over and directly drowned Chen Zong. Everything in the world, tangible and intangible, was crushed into nothingness by the sword radiance. 15 minutes. The incomparably mighty sword radiance lasted for a full 15 minutes before it gradually disappeared. When the sword radiance disappeared, a figure appeared in the world with a look of horror on his face. At that moment, Chen Zong thought that he was going to die, that he was going to be drowned and torn to pieces by the terrifying sword radiance. But he persevered. In the end, he persevered. Terrifying. It was so terrifying that Chen Zong did not want to go through it a second time. It was even more terrifying than facing the remnant soul of the great Abyss King. Sword Principal Jr., you did well. You passed my test. Just as Chen Zong was struggling to get rid of the horror of the endless sword radiance penetrating his body and tearing his flesh and soul to pieces, a vast, indistinct, grand, and boundless ancient voice seemed to have penetrated the endless space and time from the ancient times and descended. The moment the voice sounded, the wild wind in the world stopped and solidified. A patch of darkness seemed to descend, as if it was an eternal night. Chen Zong could not move. Under the influence of this voice, it seemed to be even more terrifying than the sword radiance just now. The light diffused and the eternal night disappeared. A figure seemed to have torn the endless space and time from the ancient times. Time reversed and space reversed. He took a step forward and solidified from a blur to a solid form, appearing in front of Chen Zong. The familiar figure was the sword principal expert in the great Abyss King's memory. He was a supreme saint expert who cultivated the sword principle. At this moment, he was standing in front of Chen Zong. He felt that he could not breathe. A trace of indescribable respect rose from the depths of his heart and spread out. This supreme saint expert had an ordinary appearance, but his aura was unique. He was like a scorching sun between heaven and earth, illuminating the world and illuminating the world. Junior Sword Principal greets Senior. Chen Zong straightened his back and crossed his arms in a sword salute. This was respect for the senior in the Sword Principal, as well as for the senior who killed the Void Demon in the ancient times. No matter what kind of person he was, these 2 points alone were enough for Chen Zong to show his sincere respect. Junior, you have passed my test and are qualified to know my title, the Supreme Saint said. The Supreme Swordsman spoke. His voice did not sound as vast as before. It sounded more real and profound, as if it was branded. My name is the Heavenly Calamities Sword Saint. Tribulation Sword Saint. Chen Zong repeated it silently. He felt an indescribable throbbing in the depths of his heart and soul. Tribulation. These 2 words seemed to contain the power of heaven. Sword Saint. Sword Saint. Sword Principal Absolute Saint. What a respectable title. What an honor. Junior, enter my inheritance sword steel and pass my test. You are qualified to receive my inheritance. The Tribulation Sword Saint did not pay attention to Chen Zong's inner shock and thoughts. He said again, there are 2 inheritances in this inheritance sword steel. You can choose one. The first inheritance is the sword technique I practiced when I entered the Saint realm. It is called Tribulation Sword Technique, a Saint grade top grade. The second inheritance is the path I opened. It is called 3 Tribulations Sharpening. It is a unique secret technique, but I did not practice it. Chen Zong was shocked when he heard the first inheritance. Saint grade top grade sword technique. It was undoubtedly the peak of Saint grade martial arts. There might be Saint grade top grade martial arts above it, but they were very rare. After all, Spirit grade martial arts were rare. Spirit grade top grade martial arts were very rare, and Spirit grade top grade martial arts were very rare. In the entire sky-bearing sky territory, it was just a name. Perhaps there were Spirit grade top grade martial arts in Sky Origin Saint Realm, but Saint grade martial arts were not comparable to Spirit grade martial arts. Even if there were Spirit grade martial arts, they were very rare. Saint grade top grade martial arts were enough to cause countless Saint realm masters to fight for it. Chen Zong was very tempted. Saint grade top grade sword technique was also called Tribulation Sword Technique, and the opponent was called Tribulation Sword Saint. It could be inferred how terrifying this sword technique was. It might be the top of Saint grade top grade martial arts. But immediately, Chen Zong calmed down as if he had been doused with cold water. Saint grade top grade sword technique was very good and powerful, but the premise was that he had to master it. With his current foundation and realm, he had no clue how to comprehend Saint grade top grade blood drop sword technique, let alone Saint grade top grade tribulation sword technique. After he got it, he would not be able to use it for a long time. After all, the more advanced a martial art was, the more it required a strong foundation and solid foundation to comprehend and cultivate it. Chen Zong's accumulation was just at the beginning of Saint grade martial arts. He could practice Saint grade low grade martial arts, but Saint grade mid grade martial arts were not easy. As for Saint grade top grade martial arts, it was even more difficult. Saint grade top grade martial arts were needless to say. The road was to walk step by step. There was no reaching the sky in one step. Rice was to be eaten one bite at a time. You could not become fat in one breath. Everything needed a foundation. For example, building a tall building required a good foundation and stable walls. Everything, no matter how simple or precious it was, no matter how ordinary or mysterious it was, had many principles. Understanding this principle, Chernzong quickly calmed down and thought about the second inheritance. 3 tribulations sharpening. He could not tell anything from the name. He could only get some simple information from the tribulation sword saint's words, the path of cultivation and the secret method. Senior, can you tell me more about the 3 tribulations sharpening? Chernzong asked seriously. The 3 tribulations sharpening was created by all my feelings in the later stage. It sharpens the sword intent. If you master it, you will have a chance to surpass me, the tribulation sword saint said simply, but Chernzong's expression changed slightly. Sword intent. There were 5 realms in the Tao of Sword. The 4th realm was enlightening sword principle, and the 5th realm was palm sword intent. However, the 3 tribulations sharpening was to sharpen the sword intent. How could he understand the word supreme? If he master it, he would have a chance to surpass the tribulation sword saint. What about it? In an instant, countless thoughts burst forth. With the current strength of Chernzong's soul, thousands of thoughts could burst forth in a single breath. Then, Chernzong caught another point. The tribulation sword art was the sword art practiced by the tribulation sword saint when he entered the saint realm. The 3 tribulations sharpening was created by him in the later stage. Did the so-called later stage refer to the great saint realm? Thoughts burst forth and collided. Chernzong's eyes became brighter and brighter. Although the tribulation sword saint said little, it did not stop Chernzong from guessing. The tribulation sword saint did not urge him. He quietly waited for Chernzong to make a choice. Choose. How should I choose? The first inheritance was the tribulation sword art of the highest grade of the saint realm. The second inheritance was the secret method of the 3 tribulations sharpening, whose effect was unknown. Then, Chernzong exhaled deeply and slowly closed his eyes. Then, he would leave the choice to his heart. Chapter 1254. In one's life, one would face countless choices on the path of cultivation. It could be 2 types, 3 types, or multiple types. The choice was very important. It would affect one's future path and how far a cultivator could go. The wrong choice would lead to a dead end. It would be too late to turn back. The right choice was to walk toward a bright path of hope. Then, how could one make the right choice? Sometimes, people's thoughts would be confused, deviated, and made mistakes. It was not always accurate, because there were too many external disturbances and temptations, which would affect one's thoughts and judgment all the time. Leave it to the heart. Leave it to the deepest part of the heart to make the choice. Ordinary cultivators might not be able to make the right choice even if they left it to the heart, because most cultivators had a vague concept of the heart. Chernzong did not. Especially after comprehending the mystery of the heart sword, he had a deeper understanding of the way of the heart. He calmed down, removed all distracting thoughts and disturbances, and immersed himself in the deepest part of the heart, leaving the choice to his heart. No doubts in the heart. Follow the guidance and choice of the heart, and make the right choice for oneself. Heavenly Tribulation Sword Technique. 3 tribulations sharpening edge. Choose one of the 2, which one? After a quarter of an hour, Chernzong's closed eyes suddenly opened, and a beam of light shot out like sword light. Senior, I choose the second path. 3 tribulations sharpening edge. Chernzong's expression was very firm, and his tone was very firm. Even if the sky fell and the earth cracked, he would not waver. Good. The heavenly tribulation sword saint revealed a smile, and then pointed his finger, which seemed to last forever. The finger touched Chernzong's forehead without any reaction. Suddenly, a stream of information poured into Chernzong's sea of consciousness and into his soul like a torrent. 10 breaths. In just 10 breaths, the heavenly tribulation sword saint's finger left his body. Cultivate well. I hope you can forge the supreme sword will with the three tribulations' sharpening edge. The voice was faint, echoing between heaven and earth. The heavenly tribulation's sword saint's body faded and dissipated with the wind, as if he had merged with heaven and earth. He was everywhere and no longer existed. Heaven and earth still existed, and Chen Zong did not leave. He sat cross-legged in the void above an endless forest of ancient trees. Under the endless sea of clouds, a gentle breeze blew. Retracting his gaze and thoughts, Chen Zong cleared all distracting thoughts and began to sort out the information that had flooded into his mind. Three tribulations sharpening the edge. This secret technique was suspected to have been created by the heavenly tribulation sword saint when he was in the great saint realm to sharpen his sword intent. The transmission ended in just 10 breaths of time, but the information contained within was extremely vast and astonishing. Moreover, each word could be said to be incomparably mysterious. Even so, there were also annotations left by the Heaven's Calamity Sword Saint. Chen Zong could refer to them and understand them better, which would make it easier for him to cultivate. The Heavenly Calamity Sword Saint's Way of the Sword had long surpassed the 5th level of the Way of the Sword. As a result, the three tribulations sharpening was useless to him, so he did not cultivate it. However, Chen Zong's Way of the Sword was only in the 4th level, so the three tribulations sharpening was naturally of great use. After meditating, Chen Zong had a deeper understanding of the three tribulations sharpening and had basically grasped the mysteries within. Unfortunately, the three tribulations sharpening was used to sharpen his sword intent, and its purpose was to forge the supreme sword intent. Now, Chen Zong's Way of the Sword was only in the 4th level of the Way of the Sword, the light sword principle. Only after breaking through and comprehending the embryonic form of the sword intent could he officially cultivate the three tribulations sharpening. For now, he could only put it aside for the time being. After he finished meditating, the surrounding heaven and earth began to fade gradually and slowly disappeared. After an unknown period of time, Chen Zong suddenly woke up and appeared on the 3rd floor of the Ice Emperor Palace. He was still standing in front of the 100-meter sword steel. The sword steel was still filled with the aura of the Way of the Sword, but it seemed to have faded a lot. Chen Zong did not know whether it was his illusion or not. In fact, Chen Zong did not know that the Heaven Tribulation Sword Saint's inheritance was mainly the Heaven Tribulation Sword art. The three tribulations sharpening was just a sudden inspiration, and could only be passed down once. In other words, after Chen Zong received the three tribulations sharpening inheritance, there was only one choice for those who came here later, and that was the Heaven Tribulation Sword art. Of course, Chen Zong did not know this, and even if he knew, he would not care. A voice seemed to ring in the depths of Chen Zong's heart, urging him to leave as soon as possible. After receiving the inheritance, he had to leave the Ice Emperor Palace. At this moment, Chen Zong felt an extremely hot aura locking onto him. A pair of blazing eyes stared at him with shocking power, as if wanting to see through him. Chen Zong turned around, and when their eyes met, there was an invisible sound, and invisible ripples surged out. "You are the King Stage Genius of the Sky Pillar Upper Region," Eclipse King said with some doubt, but also some certainty. If one was not a King Stage Genius, one would not be able to enter the 3rd level of the Ice Emperor Palace. King Stage Genius of the Tian Yuan Sacred Region. Chen Zong seemed to be asking the other party. Interesting. A smile appeared on Eclipse King's face, and his eyes suddenly became dark and deep, and the edges of his pupils seemed to be dyed with a layer of red light. Then, a dark red sun seemed to rise behind Eclipse King, and his aura continued to grow, like a sun hanging in the sky, illuminating the world. Heat, heat, heat. Incomparable heat spread out in all directions, and a terrifying wave that could burn and erode everything spread out. It was as if the night had descended, and it wanted to devour all light. Buzz. Like a divine sword, Chen Zong straightened his back, and an extremely sharpness shot out from his body, piercing through the clouds. In the vast expanse, there was a sharpness that could pierce through everything and tear everything apart. The two completely different auras collided, and countless ripples burst out, surging endlessly. King stage, king stage, king. It was like a fierce battle. Chernzong was very interested in the king stage genius from the Tian Yuan sacred region. He wanted to know his opponent's strength, methods, and everything else. Eclipse King was also very interested in Chernzong. A genius from a remote region like the Sky Pillar upper region had reached the king stage, and he could even come here to receive the inheritance. He must have some extraordinary methods. However, the two could not make a move, because a force descended on them, and their auras were suppressed instantly. Their bodies seemed to be imprisoned, and they could not move. In the next moment, their eyes were fading, and they turned into a stream of light that seemed to rush into the sky and disappeared. It was as if they had traveled through time and space. After an unknown amount of time, Chernzong woke up, and he realized that he was standing in a world of ice and snow. The cold wind blew, and the chill hit him. The world was vast, and there was no one in sight. There were only ice stones and ice pillars. Where's the Ice Emperor Palace? Chernzong quickly looked around, but he did not see the Ice Emperor Palace. However, he had already obtained an extraordinary opportunity in the Ice Emperor Palace, and it was time to leave. Chernzong's gains in the Ice Emperor Palace this time were beyond his imagination. First, he comprehended the mystery of the heart sword in a life-and-death situation, grasped the heart domain, and became a trump card. Second, he obtained the blood drop sword seal, which sealed the high-grade saint-level blood drop sword technique. He could release it with his own strength, and it was very powerful. He could also comprehend the sword technique within. Third, he obtained the three tribulations sharpening secret technique. When his sword Dao broke through to the 5th level in the future, he could sharpen his sword intent. Chernzong believed that no one, not even King Eclipse, could compare with the 3 gains he had made. The Ice Emperor's secret realm is not closed yet. I still have a chance to find more opportunities. Chernzong thought to himself. His body moved, and he flew across the snow at an extremely fast speed, and disappeared in an instant. His spiritual sense also spread out, covering a radius of 1,000 meters. After comprehending the mystery of the heart sword, Chernzong's spiritual sense did not become stronger, but it could be used more effectively. Originally, it could only cover a radius of 100 meters to maintain the balance between consumption and recovery. But now, with the increase in utilization, it could cover a radius of 1,000 meters. Within 1,000 meters, everything was extremely clear. Even 10 meters under the snow was within the range of Chernzong's spiritual sense. This was a place that could not be seen with his eyes. Some treasures were buried under the snow. In the depths of the Ice Emperor's secret realm, in the Ice Emperor Palace, which was covered by a 1,000-meter-long snowstorm, beams of light shot out in all directions randomly, disappearing in an instant. This was actually a method left behind by the ancient Ice Emperor. It was a protective method in disguise. After all, those who could obtain the inheritance of the Ice Emperor Palace were all extraordinary. In ancient times they could be called true geniuses. If they continued to cultivate, their future achievements would be extraordinary. Since they had painstakingly obtained the inheritance, they had a bright future ahead of them. It would be a pity if they were killed by someone with evil intentions. The ancient Ice Emperor could not guarantee that no one would have evil intentions. He could only use some methods to send everyone out of the Ice Emperor Palace and into various parts of the Ice Emperor's secret realm. As for whether or not they would be found and attacked by someone with evil intentions, it was not within the Ice Emperor's consideration. After the last beam of light left the Ice Emperor Palace, rumbling sounds could be heard. The Ice Emperor Palace began to sink bit by bit, slowly disappearing into the ground. Then, the 1,000-meter-long snow storm surrounding the Ice Emperor Palace was blown away, spreading in all directions. It was like a turbulent flow of ice. In just a few dozen breaths, the 1,000-meter-long snow storm had completely dissipated. The Ice Emperor Palace, which contained great opportunities, also disappeared. This time, there were many people who obtained opportunities from the Ice Emperor Palace. However, there were also some people who could not enter to obtain opportunities. There were also a few who did not pass the test after entering and died in the test. After all, the Ice Emperor Palace contained great opportunities, but it also contained great dangers. It was almost impossible to obtain a fortuitous opportunity without being willing to face the dangers. With my current strength, there are very few people who can be my match in the Ice Emperor's secret realm, Chen Zong thought to himself. According to Chen Zong's current guess, the Ice Soul Evil Spirit should be an evil life form formed by the blood of the Void Evil Spirit mixed with the Soul Remnant. It was a life form that only existed in the Ice Emperor's secret realm. No wonder there was a familiar feeling. However, the previously powerful Ice Soul Evil Spirit was nothing to him now. Even a semi-holy Ice Soul Evil Spirit was no match for him. Of course, if it was a high-level half-saint Ice Soul Evil Spirit, it would definitely be a strong opponent. Chapter 1255. A sword mark spanned across the ice mountain. It was a ghastly sight and constantly emitted an astonishingly sharp aura. Chen Zong stood in front of the sword mark and stared at it, carefully comprehending it. This sword mark was left behind by a powerful swordsman during the ancient war. It was protected by the power of the Ice Emperor's secret realm, so its power did not dissipate and could be comprehended by future generations. If it was in the outside world, the mysteries contained in such a mark would gradually dissipate with the passage of time. Time was indeed a terrifying force that could corrode everything. Even a great saint stage powerhouse would not be able to withstand the erosion of time. After comprehending for a while, the sword mark gradually disappeared and disappeared between heaven and earth. Chen Zong came to his senses. His eyes shone brightly and then gradually dimmed. His strength did not increase, but Chen Zong's realm of swordsmanship had improved once again. Every time it was comprehended, the marks left behind by the ancient war would disappear. In other words, every time the Ice Emperor's secret realm opened, some of the resources inside would be used up and could not be recovered. Of course, after some spiritual medicine and sacred medicine were picked, they would gradually grow back with the passage of time. In fact, Chen Zong had already gained a lot in the Ice Emperor's secret realm. Of course, no one would mind gaining more. To Chen Zong, it would be great if he could find a few more Ice Soul Mysterious Fruit. Then, he would be able to increase the level of his cultivation method even faster. Unfortunately, sacred medicine like the Ice Soul Mysterious Fruit was rare even in the ancient times. It was even rarer now. He was lucky enough to get 3 of them before. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, another 3 days had passed. A shocking aura fluctuation came from afar. There was the sound of metal clashing. The aura was sharp and domineering. Senior Sister Yu. Chen Zong felt that the aura was somewhat familiar. A figure immediately appeared in his mind. He suddenly sped up and flew forward. On one side of the battle was Yu Nianxin. On the other side was the chief disciple of the Huangfu clan, Huangfu Feihuang. The battle between the two had reached an intense stage, and both of them had activated the power of their bloodlines. Before entering the Ice Emperor's secret realm, Yu Nianxin's strength was not as strong as Huangfu Feihuang's. But now Yu Nianxin's strength had increased significantly compared to before. He had become even stronger. When he activated the power of his bloodline, he could be ranked as a marquis. However, Huangfu Feihuang was already very strong to begin with. After entering the Ice Empress' secret realm, her strength had increased even further. After awakening her bloodline, her strength had become even stronger. It could be seen that although Yunyanxin had become stronger after activating his bloodline power, he was no match for Huangfu Feihuang and gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Boom! It was as if Huangfu Feihuang's spear had shattered the vast sky. The spear light that was burning with golden flames was incomparably terrifying. It was as swift as a golden flame meteor streaking across the vast sky. It was also as forceful as a meteorite falling from the sky. Its might was extremely terrifying. Astonishing auras surged and surged, converging from all directions. They surged and followed, burning and shattering everything. Yunyanxin's expression suddenly changed greatly. He slashed out with his sword, and a green sword light shot out as if it was tearing apart the heavens and the earth. In an instant, the green sword light shattered inch by inch under the attack of the golden flame spear light. An extremely terrifying power blasted towards Yunyanxin, and Yunyanxin's body was about to be shattered in an instant. Yunyanxin exploded with all his strength, and once again slashed out with his sword. In terms of bloodline, both of them were at the high level. However, Yunyanxin's bloodline had not been awakened for long enough. His development and application of the power of his bloodline was not deep enough, and his own foundation was not enough. On the other hand, Huangfu Feihuang was born as a prodigy of a bloodline clan. Since birth, he had enjoyed extremely good cultivation resources. He had begun to awaken the power of his bloodline at a young age. Later on, his cultivation was also mainly based on his bloodline. His development and application of the power of his bloodline far surpassed Yunyanxin's. Moreover, Huangfu Feihuang's powerful family background and foundation had laid an incomparably solid foundation early on. Boom! Although Yunyanxin blocked the spear with his sword, he was still sent flying by the terrifying power. His face was pale, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. A dark red mist of blood floated in the air. After injuring Yunyanxin with his spear, Huangfu Feihuang did not attack Yunyanxin again. His figure flashed, and he turned into a stream of golden flames, quickly rushing in another direction. Chernzong, who was rapidly approaching, saw a spirit herb growing on an ice stone. His eyes flashed. The spirit herb was straight up, and it was shaped like a coiling dragon. The dragon's head was looking up at the sky, as if it was about to soar into the sky. It was vivid and lifelike, and its charm was profound. In an instant, Chernzong's thoughts turned rapidly, and he deduced what had happened. Yunyanxin and Huangfu Feihuang both had their eyes on the spirit herb that looked like a coiling dragon soaring into the sky, and they were fighting over it. If that was the case, Chernzong used his fingers like a sword and drew a line in the air. An incomparably deep white sword light instantly tore through the sky, bursting out with an incomparably terrifying speed to kill Huangfu Feihuang. Before the sword light arrived, the astonishing sword pressure first penetrated through the air and fell on Huangfu Feihuang's body. Huangfu Feihuang's hair stood on end, and he was greatly shocked. His expression changed drastically, and he gave up on picking the spirit herb. His figure spun, and he brought his spear up. Golden flames erupted like a volcano, and he suddenly stabbed out with his spear. The spear rose and fell, and the spear light turned into a golden phoenix that spread its wings and soared high in the sky. It let out an extremely resounding cry that seemed to come from the ancient times, melodious and vast. In an instant, the sword light shattered, and the golden phoenix rushed toward Chernzong. Its aura was astonishing, and a pair of eyes burning with golden flames stared at Chernzong. It was like a real phoenix, and it brought pressure to Chernzong. Just now, Chernzong did not block Huangfu Feihuang's attack because he pursued the extreme speed of the sword. Therefore, it was not powerful enough, and that was why it was broken. With a flick of his left thumb, a tyrannical power that seemed to be able to shatter mountains erupted. The heavy dragon sword shot out from the scabbard like an aurora, and it was as fast as lightning. Boom! The heavy dragon sword that shot out from the scabbard was like a pitch-black lightning bolt that tore through the air, directly attacking the golden phoenix. With an astonishing momentum, the golden phoenix paused for a moment and then collapsed, turning into golden ripples that spread out in all directions. The heavy dragon sword shot back toward Chen Zong. With a grab and clench of his right hand, Chen Zong exploded with an astonishing speed, turning into a flash of light that charged toward Huang Fu Fei Huang. Infinite golden phoenix break. With a delicate shout, the golden spear pierced out as if it was shattering the vacuum, and an extremely sharp cry resounded through the sky. The huge golden phoenix seemed to have drilled out of the void. With a flap of its wings, a blazing storm was stirred up, and it immediately melted the surrounding ice and snow, causing white steam to rise in spirals. The gigantic golden phoenix smashed through the air, bringing with it an incomparably terrifying heat. In front of it, Chen Zong appeared incomparably tiny. However, Chen Zong was not afraid at all. His expression did not change in the slightest as he rushed toward the huge golden phoenix. The golden phoenix's power was very strong, enough to reach the Marquis level. It was not the slightest bit weaker than Marquis Sword Mountain. However, for Chen Zong, it was not enough. The heavy dragon sword slashed out, and a pitch-black sword light split the sky, and at the same time, split the tyrannical golden phoenix. Huang Fu Fei Huang was shocked. This move was one of her full strength, but it was easily broken by the opponent. She could not believe it. Huang Fu Fei Huang recognized Chen Zong. Previously, they had fought for a bit in the snow domain, and they were evenly matched. How could his strength have become so powerful now? She could not believe it. The power of the golden phoenix. Limitless golden phoenix break. Huang Fu Fei Huang did not believe it, and once again erupted with power. This time, it was an explosion that surpassed the limit. It was an explosion that exceeded the original 120%. With a thrust of the spear, the golden phoenix seemed to have grown bigger, and its whole body was burning with golden flames. The power of this attack was even stronger, but it was still within the scope of a Marquis-level genius. It was not at the level of a monarch. For Chen Zong, it was not a threat unless it was at the level of a king. Without using any sword arts, the heavy dragon sword slashed up, and the huge golden phoenix was once again split apart. The sword light was like lightning, and instantly approached Huang Fu Fei Huang. The long spear blocked the sword attack. With a clang, Huang Fu Fei Huang's expression suddenly changed. She only felt an indescribable force crazily rushing toward her. It was so terrifying that it could destroy everything. The spear was bent, and her arms trembled, as if her bones were about to break. Her whole body flew back hundreds of meters under the terrifying power of this sword attack, and her blood and qi flowed backward. One sword attack. With just one sword attack, Huang Fu Fei Huang was injured. This sword attack also made Huang Fu Fei Huang understand that she was not the opponent's opponent. The difference in strength was too obvious. This item is useful to me. Give it to me, and my Huang Fu clan will owe you a favor. Huang Fu Fei Huang did not leave. She wiped away the blood at the corner of her mouth from hundreds of meters away, and stared at Chen Zong. Her voice was somewhat cold. This item was indeed useful to the Huang Fu clan. Not only was it useful to the Huang Fu clan, but it was also useful to the Dongli clan and the Yuqi clan because they were bloodline cultivators. This item is also useful to senior sister Yu, Chen Zong responded, and looked at Yu Nianxin with a smile. Yu Nianxin also smiled sweetly, and there was gratitude in the depths of her eyes. This time, if Chen Zong had not rushed here, this spiritual medicine would have been taken away by Huang Fu Fei Huang, and she would have no fate with it. This time, the two of them discovered the spiritual medicine at the same time. Although they did not recognize what kind of spiritual medicine it was, the feeling of their bloodlines let them know that this item was useful to their bloodlines. Since it was useful, they had to get their hands on it. Competition was unavoidable, and thus a battle broke out. However, Yunyanxin's strength was still inferior in the end. She was not Huangfu Feihuang's opponent, and was defeated in the end. That spiritual medicine almost fell into Huangfu Feihuang's hands. Fortunately, Chen Zong appeared to intercept and defeat Huangfu Feihuang. Huangfu Feihuang saw that Chen Zong wasn't giving her any face. She wasn't the kind of person who dilly-dallied, so she only gave Chen Zong a deep look before turning around and quickly leaving. Chen Zong did not chase after her. When Huangfu Feihuang forced Yunyanxin to retreat, he did chase after her. Senior Sister Yu, this item is called Rising Dragon Grass of Extreme Ice. It is not a spiritual medicine, but a sacred medicine, Chen Zong said with a smile. A sacred medicine. Yunyanxin was instantly shocked. She covered her red lips with her white hand, and it was somewhat alluring. Consuming the rising dragon grass of extreme ice can purify one's bloodline. If it is combined with other sacred medicines to refine the rising dragon pill of extreme ice, there is a chance that at the same time the bloodline is purified, it will mutate and possess the power of frost, Chen Zong said calmly. Yunyanxin was even more shocked. Chapter 1256. The rising dragon grass was a rare panacea with high value, but it was useless to Chen Zong because Chen Zong was not a bloodline cultivator. The value of treasures in the world was relative. If it was useful, it would be valuable. If it was useless, it would be valuable. For bloodline cultivators, the rising dragon grass was extremely valuable. They would pay a high price to get it. Chen Zong asked Yunyanxin to pick the rising dragon grass. Stop! Just as Yunyanxin approached the rising dragon grass and was about to pick it, a sharp voice came through the air at an astonishing speed. It contained a sharp edge that could cut through everything. At the same time, an extremely condensed silver sword light pierced through the sky like a meteor chasing after the moon. The sword edge was extremely cold, as if it was made of ice that had been frozen for thousands of years. Yunyanxin's expression changed. Senior sister, feel free to pick it. Chen Zong's voice sounded, making Yunyanxin feel at ease. She ignored the terrifying sword light that pierced through the air and continued to pick the rising dragon grass. Spiritual panaceas and panacea could not be picked recklessly. It was like pulling up weeds. One had to use the appropriate strength and technique. Otherwise, the medicinal properties would be destroyed. To make Yunyanxin feel at ease to pick the rising dragon grass, she unsheathed the heavy dragon sword. The pitch-black sword light pierced through the air like lightning and directly shattered the silver sword light. It turned into silver starlight and dissipated in the ice and snow. Then, a silver stream of light approached at an astonishing speed, like a shooting star passing through a gap. The extremely cold eyes stared at Chen Zong with a hint of anger, as if a high and mighty king was enraged. When a king was angry, blood would flow for thousands of miles. The slender sword emitted an astonishing radiance as it instantly tore through the air. It was as if a gorgeous meteor shower had covered the world of ice and snow as it blasted towards Chen Zong. Every meteor-like sword beam carried an extremely terrifying power as it pierced through everything. This aura made Yunyanxin's hair stand on end. She had a terrifying feeling that she was going to be pierced full of holes. Very powerful. Much more powerful than Huangfu Feihuang. Could Chen Zong fight him? Yunyanxin couldn't help but worry. Chen Zong brandished his sword. That sword was simple and unadorned. That sword strike was completely natural. That sword strike was full of mysteries. All of the silver meteor-like sword projections dissipated like snow in the face of the scorching sun. The strength of a monarch, Chen Zong muttered to himself. His eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. His sword pierced through the air like a hot knife through butter. There were 8 geniuses from Tianyuan's sacred region who had entered the Ice Empress' secret realm. One was a king, 2 dukes, and 5 marquises. This person was one of the 2 lords, the Lord of Flowing Light. As a genius of the Tianyuan sacred region, Lord of Flowing Light's vision and knowledge were extraordinary. Of course, he did not recognize the origin of the rising dragon grass. He only instinctively felt that it was extraordinary. It was a saint medicine that surpassed spiritual medicine. Saint medicines corresponded to saint realm cultivators. No matter what kind of saint medicine it had its own value and was not cheap. If he could bring it back, he could give it to the sect or sell it himself. Either way, he could make a great profit. Of course, he couldn't let it go. But now, Lord of Flowing Light was not in the mood to pay attention to the saint medicine. All of his attention was focused on Chernzong. Very powerful. This person should be a cultivator from the Sky Pillar upper region. His strength was not inferior to Lord of Flowing Lights at all. Flowing Light sword thrust. With a shout, Lord of Flowing Light burst out with his true strength. His sword condensed thousands of sword lights. The extremely condensed sword lights tore through the sky. The speed of the sword was extremely fast and its power was astonishing. It pierced through everything, more than twice as powerful as before. Saint-grade low-grade flowing light sword art. Chernzong didn't use any saint-grade sword art. Instead, he used ultra-spiritual energy to activate the heavy dragon sword, relying on his sword Dao realm and sword skills. This was because Chernzong was curious about the strength of Tianyuan sacred region's monarch-grade geniuses. So far, he had only fought with Marquis Sword Mountain. He was very curious about monarch-grade and even king-grade geniuses. The flowing light sword thrust condensed thousands of sword lights into one sword. Light was originally extremely fast, but it also had astonishing penetrating power. Under the condensation, the sword's sharpness was pushed to the extreme. Body and sword as one, the sword pierced through the sky. That sword's sword light was extremely resplendent. It was incomparably dazzling, illuminating the ice and snow in all directions. In all fairness, this sword was very powerful and exquisite. It represented that Lord of Flowing Light had cultivated the Flowing Light sword art's Flowing Light sword thrust to a very proficient level. Although he hadn't completely grasped it, he could already display its full power. This was something that Marquis-grade geniuses couldn't compare to. Heavy Dragon Sword Slash. The pitch-black sword light shattered the vacuum, fully displaying the heavy dragon sword's weight advantage. It was incomparably fierce and tyrannical. Boom! The momentum was as heavy as a mountain, as if the sky was collapsing. The sword slashed down with unparalleled power. The astonishing sword pressure suppressed all directions, causing the ice and snow to collapse in an instant. As the sword slashed down, the two swords collided. The collision of pitch-black and silver-white burst out with astonishing power. The world seemed to have sunk into a tangle of black and white. The earth-shattering sword cry resounded in all directions, shattering everything. It made Yu Nianxin feel as if his eardrums were being torn apart, causing him endless pain. However, Yu Nianxin was no longer the same as before. He forcibly withstood the impact of this shocking momentum and focused on picking the rising dragon grass. The pitch-black sword light shattered, and the silver-white sword light also shattered at the same time. Lord of Flowing Light was extremely shocked. He could tell that Chernzong had not used a saint-level sword art. Without using a saint-level sword art, Chernzong was actually able to match his saint-level sword art head-on. Just how strong was this person? Perhaps it's not that he hasn't cultivated a saint-grade sword art. A thought emerged from the depths of Lord of Flowing Light's heart. Although the possibility was very low, it didn't mean it didn't exist. If his opponent really hadn't cultivated a saint-grade sword art, then this battle, Flowing Light body fusion art. In the blink of an eye, Lord of Flowing Light performed a secret technique. It was a 7th-grade secret technique, and one that had been cultivated to a small success. Silver-white light circulated around his body, and strands of light filled the air. It was very dazzling. The moment the secret technique was performed, Lord of Flowing Light's speed suddenly increased. There were many kinds of secret techniques. Some directly increased strength or attack power, some increased speed, and some increased self-healing ability. There were all kinds of strange techniques. Lord of Flowing Light's Flowing Light Body Fusion Art was a secret technique that increased speed. It increased one's movement speed, and also increased one's attack speed. His speed increased explosively. In the blink of an eye, Lord of Flowing Light approached Chen Zong and disappeared in front of Chen Zong's eyes, leaving only a silver-white luster without a trace. Attack! Extremely condensed beams of silvery white sword light suddenly stabbed towards Chen Zong from all directions. It was as though over a dozen Lords of Flowing Light were attacking Chen Zong at the same time. Every sword strike contained incomparably terrifying power. It was not that there were a dozen Lords of Flowing Light, but that their speed was too fast. They seemed to appear around Chen Zong at the same time, attacking together. Lord of Flowing Light's explosive speed was indeed very astonishing, coping with all changes by remaining unchanged. With the heavy dragon sword in hand, the 5-foot sword circle was unbreakable. The dozen sword strikes were all blocked by Chen Zong. The tyrannical power vibrated on the heavy dragon's sword and bounced back. Boom! One sword strike burst forth with astonishing power, shattering everything and forcing Lord of Flowing Light to retreat. However, Lord of Flowing Light rapidly retreated, and then approached Chen Zong at an astonishing speed. His speed was astonishing, and his angle of attack was tricky. It was as if he could penetrate every opening to get close to Chen Zong. His slender and sharp sword silently pierced through the void and came for the kill. The moment the slender sword pierced through the air, Lord of Flowing Light's left hand drew a line from his sleeve like a sword. It was as inconceivable as a spirit snake coming out of its hole, catching people off guard and stabbing at another part of Chen Zong's body. It was as if he was doing two things at once, displaying extraordinary fighting ability. With this move, Lord of Flowing Light defeated many strong enemies. However, Chen Zong was not comparable to those strong enemies he had encountered in the past. With his super-strong perception, all of Lord of Flowing Light's movements were under Chen Zong's control. Even though Lord of Flowing Light used the Flowing Light Body Merging technique to increase his speed, he still could not avoid Chen Zong's perception. After comprehending the mystery of the Heart Sword and mastering the Heart Domain in the battle with the high-level half-saint Void Demon in the illusory Battle of Demons, Chen Zong's perception had been greatly improved. Even if he did not use the Heart Domain, his perception was sharper and more accurate. He did not need to use the Heart Domain to deal with an opponent like Lord of Flowing Light. This was enough. The heavy dragon sword crossed the sky and blocked Lord of Flowing Light's sword fingers and slender sword with incomparable precision. It was as if it had already known the trajectory of Lord of Flowing Light's attack, or as if Lord of Flowing Light's attack had landed on the heavy dragon sword by itself. This was the gap between their realms. Whether it was cultivation or swordsmanship, Chen Zong was superior to Lord of Flowing Light. In other aspects, he was also superior to Lord of Flowing Light. As a result, there was a gap between their realms. Lord of Flowing Light discovered that no matter how he attacked with his sword, or how he increased his speed, which he was so proud of to the extreme, he could not break through Chen Zong's defense. The black sword light encircled Chen Zong like an iron wall. No matter how Lord of Flowing Light attacked, he could not do anything to Chen Zong. At this time, Yun Yanxin had successfully picked the rising dragon grass. She carefully placed it in a box made of ice jade and sealed it. In this way, she could preserve the rising dragon grass's medicinal properties to the greatest extent for a longer period of time. Of course, although the sacred medicine was of a high level, it could not withstand the erosion of time. If it was stored for too long after being picked, Its medicinal properties would slowly fade away and eventually decay. After putting away the ice jade box, Yunyenshin looked back and saw a beam of sword light encircling her in all directions. It was so fast that she could not catch it with her eyes. It was Lord of Flowing Light. Under Yunyenshin's gaze, he had turned into a beam of sword light encircling her in all directions. Yunyenshin knew that she could not block any of Lord of Flowing Light's attacks. However, a figure stood erect on the icy ground. With the pitch-black heavy dragon sword in hand, he easily blocked all of Lord of Flowing Light's attacks and remained unscathed. If this is your full strength, then this battle ends here, Chunzong said. The moment his casual voice sounded, the heavy dragon sword also burst forth with an astonishing power. It was vigorous, domineering, and majestic. When the sword struck out, it was as if a mountain was pressing down, as if the sky was collapsing. The terrifying sword pressure suppressed the earth, causing Lord of Flowing Light's figure to freeze as if he was bound. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough. Boom! Chapter 1257. Lord of Flowing Light's face was pale. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. He stared at Chunzong with shock, horror, and disbelief. Don't be so smug. I'm not the strongest, Lord of Flowing Light said seriously. He was indignant. How could a cultivator of the same age from a remote region be stronger than him? Is there a king level above the monarch level? Chunzong smiled. He was not angered by Lord of Flowing Light's bad attitude because it was not worth it. He was just someone who had been defeated by a sword. You actually know. Lord of Flowing Light expressed his surprise. He then sneered, that's right. With your strength, you can't withstand 10 moves from Eclipse King. Originally, Lord of Flowing Light wanted to say 3 moves. But on second thought, he was not sure about 3 moves. He changed it to 10 moves. He was furious. I look forward to fighting King Eclipse, said Chunzong with a smile. Then I'll grant you your wish. Lord of Flowing Light smiled coldly. Suddenly, an arrow the length of a finger appeared in his hand. It glowed with flowing light. Lord of Flowing Light exerted a little force and threw it. The arrow shot out with astonishing light. A cloud-piercing arrow. The arrow exploded high in the sky, emitting a shocking light. It rippled with a vast aura. The aura was as deep as the abyss and as boundless as the sky. Eclipse King will soon rush over when he sees this signal. Lord of Flowing Light stared coldly at Chunzong. He enunciated each word clearly. When the time comes, you will realize what failure is. All right. Chunzong nodded and ignored Lord of Flowing Light's following words. Eclipse King, recalling the black-red outline of a blazing sun and the domineering aura that resembled the descent of darkness, the word eclipse was quite apartment. Chunzong was looking forward to Eclipse King's arrival. How strong was the king-level genius of Tianyuan Sacred Region? How strong was he? Yunyenshin walked not far from Chunzong and waited quietly. Moments later, a violent boom swept over at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound. It was filled with a domineering aura. However, this domineering aura was different from the aura Chunzong had sensed from King Eclipse. It wasn't that strong either. Piercing Dragon, why is it you? Flowing Light Lord frowned and said with dissatisfaction. So what if it is me? The newcomer's voice was deep and resounding, with a hint of dominance. If I didn't see your signal, why would I come here? Speak, what's the matter? The person continued to speak, and his figure also appeared under the light. He was clad in armor and his figure was tall and mighty, just like a general. He held a dark golden coiling dragon battle halberd in his hand, which looked even more domineering and extraordinary. Dragonslayer Monarch, one of the 2 monarchs. Shortly after, the dragon-slaying lord's gaze swept across the room. First, it swept across Yunyenshin's face, then it fell on Chunzong's face, and finally on Lord Streamer's. Flowing Light, Don't tell me this is the person who forced you to release the signal flare. The dragon-slaying monarch pointed at Chen Zong and laughed. He could tell that this person wasn't from the Tianyuan sacred region, but the so-called Sky Pillar upper region. Lord Streamer was a monarch-level genius from the Tianyuan sacred region, but he was forced to release the signal flare. It was hilarious. Lord Streamer's face darkened in the face of the dragon-slaying monarch's mockery. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. Piercing dragon, don't be too proud. If you were facing him, you wouldn't be any better than me. Lord Streamer thought for a moment and said disdainfully, "Is that so? Then open your eyes wide and watch carefully." The dragon-slaying monarch's personality was different from Lord Streamer's. The two of them had some conflicts, so he immediately raised his eyebrows in anger after being provoked by Lord Streamer's words. He quickly turned around and stared at Chen Zong with blazing light in his eyes. A shockingly domineering aura surged out. "Genius from the Sky Pillar upper region, come, let me see what you're capable of." The dragon-slaying monarch waved his left hand at Chen Zong provocatively. "You're no match for me." Chen Zong wasn't interested in fighting. The difference in strength between monarch-level geniuses and monarch-level geniuses was obvious. Although there were differences in strength between monarch-level geniuses of the same level, it was impossible to bridge the gap. Otherwise, his opponent wouldn't be a monarch but a monarch. Chen Zong wasn't interested in monarch-level geniuses after witnessing Lord Streamer's methods and strength. It's good to be confident, but overconfidence is arrogance and ignorance. The dragon-slaying monarch laughed instead of getting angry. He felt like he was a giant dragon, and his opponent was only a snake. Perhaps a larger snake. However, the difference between a snake and a dragon was like heaven and earth. A dragon wouldn't be angered by a snake's provocation. Although a dragon wouldn't be angered, a dragon's dignity couldn't be offended. The dragon-slaying monarch swung the dark golden halberd in his right hand, and the crescent-shaped halberd sliced through the air. A dark golden crescent moon shot towards Chen Zong with terrifying domineering aura. Although the dragon-slaying monarch had only casually launched this attack, it still contained 50% of his strength. Even a marquis-level genius would have to use all his strength to receive it. The dragon-slaying monarch didn't believe that a cultivator who wasn't from the Tianyuan sacred region could receive his attack so easily. He had already forgotten why Lord Streamer had released the signal flare. The dark golden crescent moon shot through the air, and Yun Yinxin's expression changed. He had to activate the power of his bloodline and use all his strength to block this attack. Was this the strength of a genius from the Tianyuan sacred region? Terrifying. It was suffocating. However, Chen Zong remained calm and composed, as if he didn't feel anything at all. Just as the dark golden crescent moon was about to reach him, a pitch-black sword light swept out like a painting, streaking across the sky as if night had descended. In the next moment, the dark golden crescent moon shattered, and a pitch-black sword light shot out like a crescent moon, rapidly approaching the dragon-slaying monarch. The dragon-slaying monarch's expression changed abruptly, and he hurriedly swung his halberd with both hands. His aura was like a dragon, and his roar was like a raging sea. Boom! The void seemed to shatter under this attack. The dragon-slaying monarch's full-strength attack was extremely terrifying, even more powerful than Lord Streamer's sword. It was as if he could shatter a mountain with a single strike. Lord Streamer, as his name suggested, was skilled in speed, while the dragon-slaying monarch, as his name suggested, was skilled in strength. Both of them had their own strengths and weaknesses. However, if they were to fight, it would be difficult to determine the victor. After all, this wasn't their first time fighting, and they were always unable to determine the victor. Strength was a type of strength, and speed was also a type of strength. Strength depended on the individual's application and performance. The dragon-slaying monarch swung his halberd with terrifying power, but the moment it came into contact with the sword light, his expression changed drastically. Strong. Ferocious. The power contained in the sword light was as powerful and domineering as a mountain. It came crashing down in an extremely domineering and unstoppable manner. The dragon-slaying monarch was pushed back by the terrifying force, and every step he took left a deep footprint on the icy ground. Impossible! The dragon-slaying monarch couldn't believe it. Lord Streamer was also shocked. Although he was defeated by Chernzong, he knew that Chernzong was very strong. However, he didn't expect Chernzong to be even stronger than the dragon-slaying monarch. Lord Streamer was well aware of the dragon-slaying monarch's strength after having fought him many times. It was precisely because of this that he knew how terrifying the dragon-slaying monarch's strength was. He thought that no cultivator in the Sky Pillar Upper Province could compare to the dragon-slaying monarch in strength. However, he didn't expect the dragon-slaying monarch to be at a disadvantage in terms of strength. Unbelievable! Dragon-slaying world! The dragon-slaying monarch was enraged. As his strength surged, blood-red aura filled his entire body. His originally tall and mighty body seemed to swell up as his muscles bulged. It was a shocking sight. His eyes emitted terrifying blood-red light as if a demonic god had descended. Boom! The blood-red aura coiled around the halberd like a dragon and shot out with the halberd like a roaring blood dragon. This attack contained the full force of a low-grade saint martial art. Lord Streamer's expression changed as he realized that it was much stronger than before. Yunyenshin couldn't breathe. Even though she wasn't directly targeted, the aftershocks made her feel suffocated. It was too terrifying. However, Chernzong still looked calm as if the power of this attack didn't exist at all. Slash. The heavy dragon sword slashed out in an instant. He still didn't use any saint-level martial art. He only used his ultra-spiritual energy to drive it and integrated his profound sword techniques and force exertion technique. As the sword slashed down, the blood dragon seemed to let out a sorrowful cry in an instant as it was directly shattered by the sword. The terrifying pitch-black sword light directly slashed down on the dark golden battle halberd, shattering all the power that covered it. The astonishing impact of the power caused the battle halberd to shake incessantly. With a puff, the dragon-slaying monarch couldn't stop himself from retreating. His chest felt stuffy as if he had been hit hard. He spat out a mouthful of blood. After spitting out the blood, the stuffy feeling weakened, but the sharp pain quickly spread from his chest. The dragon-slaying monarch's face was pale as his eyes glowed with disbelief. He stared at Chernzong as if he was looking at an ancient beast. Impossible! This was absolutely impossible. It felt like a dream. How could a cultivator who wasn't from the Tianyuan sacred region, a cultivator of the same generation as him, be stronger than him? Even if he was stronger than him, how could he be stronger than him in terms of strength? Even the Eclipse King was weaker than him in terms of strength. However, it was a fact that he had been forced to retreat. It was a fact that he had been struck by an extremely powerful and terrifying force. There was no trickery involved. He knew that very well. The truth was the truth. Even if he didn't admit it, it still existed. Seeing the dragon-slaying monarch vomiting blood, Flowing Light Lord felt refreshed. He wasn't the only one who had vomited blood. Even his old opponent had suffered the same fate. However, the strength of this cultivator from the Sky Pillar Upper region was truly terrifying. From the looks of it, only the Eclipse King could suppress him. He hoped that the Eclipse King would come after seeing his signal flare. Otherwise, the Tianyuan Sacred Region's prodigy would be utterly humiliated. After defeating the dragon-slaying monarch with a single slash, Chernzong didn't attack again. After all, the two of them weren't really enemies. Of course, if they had any killing intent, they wouldn't be standing there unscathed. Chernzong would definitely use his true strength to kill them on the spot. Sheathing the heavy dragon sword, Chernzong continued to wait for the arrival of his strongest opponent. Chapter 1258. That aura was as dazzling as the sun. That aura was as deep as the night. This was a unique aura. In this place, it belonged to only one person. Eclipse King, you are finally here. Both Flowing Light Lord and Dragon Piercing Lord were overjoyed. They were actually excited and happy about Eclipse King's appearance because of a cultivator who was not from Tianyuan Sacred Region. This would never happen in the past. But now, only Eclipse King could help them wash away their humiliation. If their situation were to spread to the sect, it would cause an uproar. A smile appeared on Chen Zong's face when he sensed the aura approaching. On the third level of Ice Imperial Palace, the two had confronted each other. However, because of the Ice Imperial Palace's power, they could not fight and were sent away to different places. But in Chen Zong's heart, he also yearned to fight Eclipse King. Chen Zong was very curious about how strong the king-ranked geniuses of Tianyuan Sacred Region were. Eclipse King, who was rushing over, also saw Chen Zong. Suddenly, his eyes shot out a bright light. It was as hot as the sun, burning everything. There was no need for words. The moment their eyes met, both knew what the other meant. Fight. The rapidly approaching Eclipse King stretched out a black-red beam of light. His body leaped high into the air as he extended his right hand. There seemed to be a black-red aura swirling in his palm. It transformed into a black-red sun seal that emanated a terrifying aura. The seal smashed down with the power to shatter the heavens and earth. The shocking heat burned everything. The terrifying aura destroyed everything. This seal's power and profundity were shocking. It was even stronger than Flowing Light Lords and Dragon Piercing Lords. However, Yunyanxin did not feel suppressed. It was different from before. But when she looked at the black and red sun seal, her hair stood on end. A thought was telling her that the sun seal's power was terrifying. It was restrained. If she touched it slightly, she would be turned into ashes. Horrifying. A sense of horror emerged from the deepest part of her heart. Even if she activated her bloodline power and pushed her strength to the limit, she would not be a match for Eclipse King. She would not be able to withstand the attack of this sun seal. Would Junior Brother be able to deal with such strength? Yunyanxin, who was full of worry, couldn't help but look at Chen Zong. He saw that Chen Zong wasn't afraid at all. On his calm face, there was a hint of expectation in his deep eyes. Chen Zong could see and feel more from the sun seal. It was a highly condensed sun seal. It looked small, but it contained an extremely terrifying power. Moreover, it was incomparably hot. Once it exploded, that kind of power could destroy and incinerate everything. Just from this strike, one could see the difference between King Eclipse and the Flowing Light Legion and Dragon Slayer Monarch. The genius rank represented not only the level of strength but also the level of innate talent. The higher the innate talent, the more exquisite the control and application of one's strength would be. This would then lead to a greater gap in strength. This was a difference in their nature. Therefore, the ranking of geniuses was very strict and precise. There had never been a case of a monarch-level genius defeating a king-level genius. This was because anyone who could defeat a king-level genius at the same level could also be evaluated as a king-level genius. Chop! The pitch-black sword light tore through the sky and seemed to shatter the sky. It was an incomparably terrifying sword light. The pitch-black sword light collided with the eclipse seal, bursting out with an incomparably terrifying power. It surged out in all directions, shaking the ground. As the pitch-black light spread out, it was as if night had fallen. King Eclipse was slightly surprised. His opponent had taken his attack so easily. Not bad at all. It was worth it for him to use his true strength. It should be known that after entering the Ice Empress secret realm, Eclipse King had also obtained many opportunities. His strength was much stronger than before. Great Eclipse Seal. If the previous strike was just a test, then this strike was his true strength. A millstone-sized eclipse seal appeared and struck down from the sky. In an instant the air surged endlessly. It was as if a black and red sun was falling from the sky. It was incomparably terrifying. The blazing sun sank and darkness descended. It was as if everything was covered. One couldn't see or hear anything. One could only feel a shocking heat that seemed to emerge from the depths of one's body. It also seemed to invade from the outside, burning one's body and turning one into ashes. Even the coldness of the Ice Empress' secret realm couldn't resist it. Chen Zong felt as if his blood and qi were about to be ignited. It was boiling. However, Chen Zong possessed the purple cloud black star flame, a unique earth flame. His body had an astonishing resistance to high temperatures. Unless the temperature of the flame exceeded the level of the purple cloud black star flame, it would be neutralized. But now, King Eclipse's Great Eclipse Seal was able to make Chen Zong's blood and qi boil. It meant that the temperature contained within was extremely shocking. It wasn't inferior to the purple cloud black star flame at all. Perhaps King Eclipse also had a kind of heaven and earth unique flame. After all, he was a king stage genius. Moreover, the Tianyuan sacred realm was many times larger than the Sky Pillar upper region. It was only natural that it had more resources. However, Chen Zong didn't know. After all, he had never been to the Tianyuan sacred realm. Everything was just a guess. But regardless of whether it was a guess or a fact, King Eclipse was a good opponent. Chen Zong's first king stage opponent should be King Hao Yuan. However, that was only a strand of King Hao Yuan's consciousness. And now, he was facing a true king stage genius. He was a worthy opponent. Chen Zong believed that he would be a good opponent. Great Eclipse Seal. This attack already had the power of a lower sacred realm martial art. Chen Zong didn't hold back anymore. 10 blades extreme beheading. Kill. Raising his sword, 10 pitch-black sword lights tore through the sky. 5 of them went for the Great Eclipse Seal, while the other 5 went for King Eclipse. After Chen Zong comprehended the mystery of the Heart Sword, his control over the 10 blades extreme beheading became more refined and smooth. Every sword light was very powerful. Of course, Chen Zong also noticed that the 1,000 men extreme beheading was probably the weakest among the lower sacred realm martial art. Why was it the weakest? Because it was scattered. The 10 blades extreme beheading produced 10 sword lights. Every sword light was very powerful. However, that was only when compared to a spirit realm martial art. Compared to other lower sacred realm martial arts, it was somewhat inferior. For example, the Great Eclipse Seal that King Eclipse used was several times stronger than any of the 10 blades extreme beheading's sword light. Of course, the 1,000 men extreme beheading wasn't completely useless. It had its advantages. For example, after being scattered, it could be used to kill a group of people. Once one mastered the 3rd stage of the 1,000 men extreme beheading, a single strike would produce 1,000 sword lights. It was a killing weapon against people weaker than oneself. Think about it. On the battlefield, a single strike would produce 1,000 powerful sword lights. It could instantly kill thousands or even thousands of people. How terrifying was that? That was the advantage of the 1,000 men extreme beheading. However, Chen Zong also understood that if he could combine the 10 sword lights of the 10 blades beheading into one, even if it was not 10 times more powerful, it would still be several times more powerful. In that case, it would not be inferior to other saint-grade low-rank martial art. Furthermore, there was another point. The 1,000 men extreme beheading was very compatible with the 1,000 shadows 1,000 illusions. The 10 blades extreme beheading could be combined with the 10 shadows 10 illusions to form the 10 shadows 10 blades kill. It was even more shocking. The sword lights shattered, and the Great Eclipse Seal was also destroyed. King Eclipse's body shook in midair. After shattering the 5 sword lights, he turned into a black-red fireball and shot down from the sky. Rumble! It was as if the sky was collapsing. Even if a transcendent cultivator cultivated sacred realm martial arts and sacred realm martial arts, The number of Sacred Realm techniques they could use was actually relatively small. However, Chen Zong and King Eclipse weren't ordinary geniuses. Besides Sacred Realm techniques, they also had other techniques. The battle between the two was intense. While using Sacred Realm martial arts, they would also use ordinary technique. However, with their attainments, their ordinary attacks contained amazing mysteries and power. Fight, fight, fight. It was as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. Yunyenshin, Flowing Light Lord, and Dragon Slaying Lord were horrified. They all retreated far away, not daring to get close for fear of being affected. Flowing Light Lord didn't expect this person's strength to be so terrifying. King Realm. Flowing Light Lord's lips trembled. How is this possible? How can a King Realm genius appear in a small territory? His lips trembled, his arms trembled, his heart trembled, and his entire body trembled. He couldn't describe what he was feeling. Originally, Flowing Light Lord was still thinking about Yunyenshin. To be precise, he was thinking about Yunyenshin's Saint Herb. But now, he had to give up on this idea. He knew how terrifying a King Realm genius was. But soon after, the Flowing Light Lord's thoughts changed again, and a trace of light shot out from his eyes. So what if he's a King Realm genius? The other party wasn't a cultivator from Heavenly Sacred Realm. Once the Ice Emperor's secret realm closed, they would have to leave and return to the so-called Sky Pillar Upper Region. It was extremely difficult to enter Heavenly Sacred Realm from Sky Pillar Upper Region, even for Saint Realm Masters. What's more, Heavenly Sacred Realm was huge. Even if the other party entered Heavenly Sacred Realm, they might not be able to find him. Moreover, King Eclipse was here. With his speed, he could escape immediately after succeeding. The Ice Emperor's secret realm wasn't small. It was impossible for the other party to find him. All kinds of thoughts appeared in his mind. A trace of greed appeared in his heart again. Without any hesitation, Flowing Light Lord took advantage of the fierce battle between Chen Zong and King Eclipse to burst out with his fastest speed. He even used the Flowing Light Body Fusion technique. He streaked across the sky like a stream of light. He circled around from the side and drew a perfect arc as he approached Yunyenshin. It was too fast. This speed was completely beyond Yunyenshin's reaction time. Sword light broke through the sky and shot towards Yunyenshin. A genius from the Sky Pillar Upper Province was nothing to the Flowing Light Lord. He didn't mind killing him. One had to admit that Flowing Light Lord's timing was very accurate. However, he didn't know that Chen Zong, who was fiercely fighting King Eclipse, still had energy to spare. He was still paying attention to his surroundings. When Flowing Light Lord burst out with his speed, Chen Zong had a bad feeling. Chapter 1259. Under the Ice and Snow, an extremely condensed sword light tore through the sky like an aurora and shot towards Yunyenshin. A shocking aura surged towards Yunyenshin as the killing intent surged like a tide, causing his body to stiffen and turn cold. Even his thoughts seemed to freeze under this extreme killing intent. The difference was too great. In the next moment, Yunyenshin would be pierced through by that sword and die. The storage ring on his hand would also be taken away. At the instant of imminent danger, Chen Zong's expression was icy cold as he emanated killing intent that was filled with killing intent. His killing intent swept towards the surroundings like violent waves, like a volcano that shot into the sky, and it was extremely formidable and filled with shocking killing intent. This extremely horrifying killing intent instantly alarmed Eclipse King. How many people did one have to kill to accumulate such a horrifying killing intent? At the same time, the Eclipse King also knew about Flowing Light Lord's actions. He was stunned and then enraged. Instantly, the Eclipse King guessed Flowing Light Lord's ulterior motives and that he was using him. He was a king-ranked genius, a future king-ranked martial artist. How could he be used by others against his will? However, the Eclipse King also saw the anger and killing intent in Chen Zong's eyes. In an instant, Chen Zong's body flashed as his figure shot out like a sword light. 10 shadows, 10 blades kill. When he was fighting the Eclipse King earlier, Chen Zong did not use this move because he was not at that level yet. Flowing Light Lord's speed was considered very fast among the monarch-ranked geniuses. He was even comparable to some king-ranked martial artists. However, Chen Zong's speed was not slow among the king-ranked martial artists either. At this moment, his anger exploded, causing the ground to crumble. Chen Zong's speed was increased to the maximum and was even faster than Flowing Light Lord. He attacked later but arrived first. 1 sword, 1 shadow, and 1 blade sliced through the air. The heavy dragon sword released an extremely powerful aura as it instantly blocked Flowing Light Lord's sword. The extremely powerful force caused it to explode. A second figure turned into a pitch-black sword light as it charged towards Flowing Light Lord with a terrifying force that could shatter mountains. This was not a competition like before, but a battle of life and death. It was a battle where Chen Zong showed his true strength. The difference in strength between a monarch and a king was evident. Lord Flowing Light only felt a terrifying force strike him, causing his body to tremble incessantly. His powerful strength seemed to have been defeated, and it was in a state of chaos. That wisp of pitch-black sword light tore through the sky like a bolt of lightning, and it caused Flowing Light's pupils to constrict rapidly to the size of needles. A strand of indescribable terror surged out from the depths of his heart and soul, and then extreme icy coldness suffused his spine and spread throughout his body. His body was stiff and numb, and he was unable to move. He could only watch helplessly as the pitch-black sword light blasted towards him. Only now did Lord Flowing Light truly understand the gap between him and his opponent. A trace of regret flashed through his eyes. Why was he so greedy? However, there were no ifs. Once a choice was made, one had to bear the corresponding consequences. Stop! Eclipse King roared as he sent a great eclipse seal at Chen Zong. If Chen Zong did not turn around to defend, he would be injured. Although Lord Flowing Light had used him as a suspect to infuriate Eclipse King, Lord Flowing Light was ultimately a genius from the same place as him. If he were to be killed by a genius from another place, it would be a loss of face for him. After all, it was right under his nose. Of course, it would be a different story if he did not see or know. Lord Flowing Light's face flashed with joy and relief. With Eclipse King taking action, he would definitely be able to stop his opponent. Instantly, a third figure and a third sword light appeared as they charged towards the Great Eclipse Seal. In the instant he resisted, Chen Zong's sword slashed across Lord Flowing Light's neck, beheading him. His head flew high into the air, and his face still had a mixture of joy and fear, as well as a trace of regret. Flowing Light. Dragonslayer Monarch's eyes turned bloodshot. He had crossed swords with Lord Flowing Light many times. They were evenly matched, but to a certain extent, they could be considered friends. Lord Flowing Light was killed right in front of him. Rage erupted as killing intent surged from the depths of his chest. Kill! Dragonslayer whirled. He unleashed his full strength as a blood-red aura roared like a dragon. The battle halberd carried an extremely terrifying force as it smashed towards Chen Zong like it could shatter a mountain. This strike seemed like it wanted to pulverize Chen Zong. The astounding pressure caused the air beneath the battle halberd to form a vacuum. Countless energy turbulence surged in all directions, causing the ground to shatter inch by inch. It was a strike with all his strength. A fourth figure and a fourth sword light appeared. Kill! One strike blocked Lord Flowing Light's sword, one strike blocked Eclipse King's Great Eclipse Seal, one strike killed Lord Flowing Light, and one strike repelled Dragonslayer Monarch. In an instant, Chen Zong had used 10 shadows 10 blades to its limit. It was extremely exquisite. Boom! The moment the Great Eclipse Seal was blocked, it burst forth with astonishing power. After shattering the sword light, it continued towards Chen Zong's body. 10 shadows 10 blades was indeed powerful, but the Great Eclipse Seal was even more powerful. This was the flaw of Thousand Executioner sword art. The power of a single sword light was almost the weakest among the sacred martial arts. However, it didn't need to be very powerful. It only needed to be able to block it for an instant. A fifth figure and a fifth sword light shot towards Dragonslayer Monarch, dodging the Great Eclipse Seal's attack. The attack landed on the ground, causing the earth to tremble. A huge crater was blasted open on the icy ground. As the sword arrived, Dragonslayer Monarch's face was filled with horror. His anger seemed to have been quenched by ice water. He instantly calmed down. A chill assaulted his body, causing his back to tremble. He unconsciously straightened his body as the chill spread throughout his body. For a moment, he felt as if his mind had frozen. He couldn't even move his body. It wasn't just the power of Chen Zong's sword, but also the murderous intent that erupted from Chen Zong's body. One had to know that Chen Zong had killed countless demon race cultivators in Blue Wave World. He had even entered the Earth Demon Abyss and killed millions of demon race cultivators. He had also entered the devil-devouring Forbidden Land and killed many void demons. Among his peers, almost no one could compare to him in terms of slaughter. Even most Saint Realm Masters could not compare to Chen Zong, killing as many people as he did. This was especially true for the demon race. Their life force was higher than that of ordinary humans, and the life force of void demons was higher than that of the demon race. Although there was no special method to unleash such murderous intent, the eruption of such murderous intent was like a torrent bursting through a dam. It was enough to cause those weaker than him to lose focus. This was the case with Flowing Light Lord before, and now it was the same with Dragonslayer Monarch. But this time, Eclipse King's reaction was faster. His figure flickered, and like a black and red sun, he descended from the sky with a terrifying power, shattering everything in his path. This attack was so powerful that Chen Zong gave up on Dragonslayer Monarch and charged forward. An astonishing momentum surged out as a terrifying power burst out in all directions. The icy ground collapsed inch by inch, and countless pieces of ice melted under the scorching heat. Chen Zong kept retreating as the heavy dragon's sword shook violently. Eclipse King's explosive attack was truly terrifying. Dragonslayer Monarch immediately reacted and retreated, distancing himself from Chen Zong. He had calmed down by now. Although he hated Chen Zong for Flowing Light Lord's death, he didn't dare to show it. This was because of the difference in strength and the terrifying murderous intent that Chen Zong had released. It was unknown how many lives had been killed to form such a murderous intent. Eclipse King flew back and landed on the ground, facing Chen Zong from several hundred meters away. Originally, it was just a fight, but now the atmosphere had changed. A faint murderous intent lingered in all directions. You shouldn't have killed him. Eclipse King's expression was austere. His eyes seemed to burn like a black and red sun. His tone was faint and suffused with an indescribable anger. He deserved to die. Chen Zong's answer was very direct and decisive. Damn it! I had spared his life, but I never expected him to attack Senior Sister Yu while I was fighting Eclipse King. Damn it! What a pity! Eclipse King shook his head as a look of regret suffused the depths of his eyes. It was as though he was regretting Chen Zong's talent, Chen Zong's life, and Chen Zong's bright future. Boom! Eclipse King's body immediately emitted a shocking flame. The flame was extremely red, but its edges seemed to be surrounded by a black shadow. Heaven and Earth Mystic Fire! Chen Zong instantly determined the aura fluctuation to be a Heaven and Earth Mystic Fire. It's scarlet red inside and its edges are dark like shadows. Its aura is scorching and cold. Heaven's Mystic Fire, Crimson Shadow Netherfire. Heaven and Earth mystic fire was a general term, divided into two major levels: Earth mystic fire and Heaven mystic fire. Earth mystic fire was equivalent to the transcendent realm, while Heaven mystic fire was equivalent to the saint realm. The gap between the two was obvious. After all, there was a huge gap between the transcendent realm and the saint realm. At this moment, when Eclipse King used the Heaven mystic fire, Crimson Shadow Netherfire, a terrifying pressure filled the air. The temperature within a few hundred meters was astonishingly high, incinerating everything in its path to ash. Chen Zong hurriedly retreated, because the terrifying heat made his body feel like it was boiling and burning, and the cold made his whole body feel stiff, which was very unfavorable for him. Eclipse King's face was solemn as his brow furrowed. Obviously, using the Crimson Shadow Netherfire was a great burden for him. Indeed, as a transcendent realm cultivator, using a saint realm Heaven's mystic fire was extremely taxing. It was like a child trying to wield a large sword. Not only did it take a lot of effort, but it was also possible to injure himself. Originally, in his battle with Chen Zong, Eclipse King did not intend to use the Crimson Shadow Netherfire. It was too powerful and difficult to use. Even if he could kill his opponent, he would have to pay a heavy price and suffer some injuries. Therefore, the Crimson Shadow Netherfire was only a trump card that he would not use until the critical moment. But now that Flowing Light Lord had been killed, no matter what the reason or purpose was, he had been killed right under his nose. No matter what, he had to avenge Flowing Light Lord. Chen Zong was very strong, and Eclipse King knew that with his normal strength, he would not be able to kill him. Even if he used a secret technique, at most he would be able to defeat him. Defeating and killing were two different concepts. Therefore, the only way to kill Chen Zong was to use the power of the Crimson Shadow Netherfire. Chapter 1260. The heat was monstrous. The ice and snow within a radius of 10 meters were completely melted by the terrifying heat, revealing a piece of land that was gradually expanding. The terrifying heavenly flames' shocking heat caused the ice and snow within the Ice Emperor's secret realm to change. Chen Zong's expression was extremely solemn. He had a feeling that Eclipse King's attack would be extremely terrifying. It was unknown if he could block it. But no matter what, he had to block it. Because, once he was locked on, there was no way to avoid it. Boom! The Crimson Shadow Hellfire instantly expanded by 3 feet, as if it was about to materialize. Eclipse King's face turned paler, the veins on his forehead bulging. He slowly raised his arms, as if he was dragging an invisible mountain. Load. Super load. In order to kill Chen Zong in one strike, Eclipse King not only used all his strength to release the Crimson Shadow Hellfire's aura to lock on Chen Zong, preventing Chen Zong from escaping, he also activated the Crimson Shadow Hellfire's power to the maximum. Boom! Inside Chen Zong's body, the 9 spiritual wheels were operating to the maximum. Super spiritual energy burst out, fully activated. The body-refining dragon power shuttled between his bones and muscles, like a dragon soaring in the sky, letting out a series of dragon roars. The purple cloud black star flame's power also spread out, trying its best to isolate the Crimson Shadow Hellfire's heat. But the difference between the heavenly flame and earthly flame was too great. It was completely suppressed. Celestial Crystal Battle Body. Chen Zong once again used his entry-level 7th rank secret technique. White crystalline mist covered both of his arms and then spread out, covering the Crimson Flame's sharp sword. At the same time, Chen Zong placed a part of his mind on the blood-dripping sword mark on the back of his right hand. If the situation turned bad, he would immediately activate the blood-dripping sword mark's power. He believed that the blood-dripping sword mark's power should be able to deal with it. However, every time the blood-dripper sword mark was activated, it would consume its power. Once its power was exhausted, the blood-dripper sword mark would disappear. Chen Zong did not know how many times he could use it, so he would not use it if he could. Die. A dignified voice sounded like a judgment. The crimson shadow hellfire instantly separated from Eclipse King, turning into a blazing sun that blasted towards Chen Zong. The temperature was astonishingly high. Everywhere it passed, the ice and snow melted and evaporated, leaving behind a pitch-black trail. Chen Zong had goosebumps all over his body. He felt as if he was about to evaporate. However, Chen Zong did not intend to activate the blood-dripping sword seal, at least not now. Heart Domain! Chen Zong shouted in a low voice that only he could hear. His mind power was instantly activated and consumed. An invisible force enveloped the area within a 3-meter radius. In an instant, Chen Zong could clearly feel everything within a 3-meter radius. Specks of dust drifted in the air time and time again, emitting a shocking chill. Immediately, incomparably hot specks of dust surged in from the outside world. They were like a flood that had burst a dam as they wildly charged over. They surged into a 3-meter radius and immediately collided with the cold ice specks, forming a shocking energy surge. However, this kind of turbulence stopped at the level of dust. Unless one's perception had reached a certain level, it would be impossible to detect it. One would only feel a gust of wind blowing past, nothing more. However, under Chen Zong's heart domain, this kind of turbulence was like a volcanic eruption or a tsunami. Its trajectory was all under Chen Zong's control. It was as if the 3-meter heart domain was completely under his control. With a single thought from Chen Zong, the collision of specks of dust that erupted like a tsunami was instantly suppressed and subsided. The terrifying aura brought about by the crimson shadow hellfire was also resisted. The amazing pressure on Chen Zong was greatly reduced. Chen Zong found that he could already get rid of the crimson shadow hellfire and escape. However, Chen Zong did not intend to retreat immediately. Since things had come to this point, then he would try the power of the crimson shadow hellfire. He wanted to see how strong the power of the Saint Realm was. Kill. 10 blade slash. 10 golden flame-like sword lights broke through the air and slashed toward the crimson shadow hellfire that was bombarding him. Immediately, Chen Zong swung his sword again. 10-blade combo. Under the heart domain, Chen Zong's mastery of the 10-blade combo increased sharply. It was almost flawless. Like a fan that was opened and closed in an instant, the 10 sword lights slashed out in succession. It was extremely accurate and wonderful. However, it was not over yet. The third swing of the sword. Double-blade combo. 5-blade combo. The 10 sword lights of the 10-blade combo gathered into 5 in an instant. The power of each sword light increased sharply and slashed out in succession. Each sword strike exhausted Chen Zong's strength. Boom! The sword lights struck the crimson shadow hellfire, but they were all shattered under the terrifying power of the crimson shadow hellfire. The astonishing power blasted out. The instant all the sword lights were shattered, the speed of the crimson shadow nether flame was also affected. Chen Zong's silhouette flickered as he rapidly retreated. However, the crimson shadow nether flame's attack was still flying towards him, as if it wouldn't rest until Chen Zong was dead. Suddenly, a figure flew over from the side at an extremely fast speed and appeared beside Chen Zong. A green sword light swept up a storm of sword chi as it blasted out with the roar of a violent wind. It was Yu Nianxin. Yu Nianxin had already stimulated the power of his bloodline and swung his sword with all his strength. The power of the crimson shadow hellfire was too strong. Yu Nianxin was worried about Chen Zong's safety and knew that he could not withstand the power of the flame, but he still resolutely attacked. No matter what, Chen Zong had to face this terrifying attack because of him. Even if he died, he would accompany him. Yu Nianxin's action startled Chen Zong, but Yu Nianxin's strength could not withstand the crimson shadow hellfire's attack. With a thought, Chen Zong immediately grabbed Yu Nianxin's arm and shook it, throwing Yunyenshin to the side. Then, he slashed out with his sword. The sword lights were endless, one after another. They were so dense that it was like a fierce rainstorm. Each sword strike contained a terrifying power. Although they were all shattered under the bombardment of the Crimson Shadow Hellfire, they were still able to slow down and weaken the Crimson Shadow Hellfire to a certain extent. Although the Crimson Shadow Hellfire was a heavenly flame with Saint Realm strength, without a suitable method to stimulate and use it, it was difficult to display its true power to the extreme. Although Eclipse King was powerful, he was still only a transcendent. His cultivation and realm had not yet reached the Saint Realm, and he had not cultivated the corresponding method, so his use of the Crimson Shadow Hellfire was quite crude. Retreat! Chen Zong quickly retreated, his speed reaching its limit. With a loud bang, the Crimson Shadow Hellfire hit the place where Chen Zong was originally standing and instantly exploded. A terrifying force spread out in all directions, like a blooming flame lotus, instantly sweeping out a radius of several hundred meters. The astonishing heat wave spread out several thousand meters, melting all the ice and snow in the area. Seeing Chen Zong dodge at the last moment, Eclipse King's expression became complicated. There was both regret and admiration. If it were him facing such a blow, he would not have been able to do any better. He might even have been injured or killed. Although this blow had the power of a Saint Realm Master, it was still too rigid. Once Chen Zong was able to break free, he would have been able to escape. Let's go. Eclipse King was certain he could not do anything to Chen Zong, so after giving Chen Zong a deep look, he immediately turned into a black-red streak of light and flew away. Because even if he stayed, he would not be able to defeat Chen Zong. Dragon-slaying Emperor was startled and also hurriedly flew away. Watching Dragon-slaying Emperor and Eclipse King leave, Chen Zong did not pursue and instead turned his gaze to the ground. Several thousand meters around him was scorched black, and several hundred meters had collapsed into a deep pit. Being able to cause such damage in the Ice Emperor's secret realm was enough to show just how terrifying the power of that blow was. If he had really been hit by it, not even his bones would have remained. Chen Zong could not help sighing. Fortunately, he had comprehended the Heart Sword and grasped the Heart Domain, otherwise, he would have had to use the blood-dripping Sword Seal's power. This kind of consumptive power was best not to use it. Flowing Light Lord's body was badly damaged and almost disappeared, but his storage ring still existed, becoming Chen Zong's spoils of war. Chen Zong checked it and revealed a look of joy. The Flowing Light Lord's storage ring was very rich, and there were many valuable items. "Senior sister, let's go," Chen Zong said to Yunyenshin. Yunyenshin nodded, and the two of them used their movement technique and left. While using her movement technique, Yunyenshin sized up Chen Zong from the corner of her eyes. This junior brother of hers who had entered White Cloud Mountain with her back then was not as strong as her. Back then, when they were being hunted on Void Demon Island, she was the one who saved him. However, she did not expect that after not seeing him for a few years, Chen Zong's cultivation had skyrocketed, and his strength had become extremely powerful, far surpassing her. In the White Cloud Mountains Outer Sect Grand Tournament that was held once every 5 years, he defeated one powerful opponent after another and finally won first place, becoming White Cloud Mountains Outer Sect's chief disciple. She originally thought that after awakening a high-tier bloodline, her strength had increased greatly, and she had closed the gap between her and Chen Zong. However, after entering the Ice Emperor's secret realm, it seemed like the gap between them had widened even further. Look up. Now, Chen Zong had become so strong that she had to look up to him. I'll work hard too. Yunyenshin secretly encouraged herself. She did not know why or what she was thinking, but she felt that she could not fall too far behind and eventually catch up to Chen Zong's back. After that, the two of them worked together and continued to reap reward. Their foundation were further strengthened with the passage of time, and Yun Yanxin's strength was also slowly increasing. At Chen Zong's level, it was very difficult to increase one's strength. Every bit of improvement required a lot of time, or it required an epiphany. However, epiphany was an unpredictable thing. No one knew when it would appear, and it required an opportunity. When the opportunity arrived, the epiphany would come. If the opportunity did not arrive, it would be useless no matter how hard one tried. During the process of getting along, Chen Zong also learned what Yun Yanxin's bloodline was. The Wind Phoenix bloodline was a high-tier bloodline with a purity of 30%. It allowed Yun Yanxin's extraordinary power of wind to mutate into the baleful wind force. The power of wind was only an ordinary extraordinary power, while the baleful wind force was an extraordinary power with two attributes. It was equivalent to the perfect fusion of two extraordinary powers. The baleful wind force not only had the speed and sharpness of the wind, but it also had the power to interfere with one's spiritual will. Chapter 1261. Entering a new volume, begging for some monthly votes. White clouds drifted leisurely, the sky was clear, and the world was quiet. The flying cloud Tao Master sat at the front, and behind him were 10 disciples of White Cloud Mountain's outer sect. Gao Hongjing's gaze swept over Chen Zong, Fu Yunxiao, and Yun Yanxin from time to time, as if he was trying to figure something out. He had a feeling that the three of them had become more profound and mysterious after obtaining the so-called opportunity to enter the Saint Realm. He couldn't help but feel jealous. The difference between entering the Ice Emperor's secret realm and not began to show. After all, the opportunities in the Ice Emperor's secret realm were indeed great. Even if they didn't enter the Ice Emperor's palace, they still gained a lot. Just looking at the traces left behind by the ancient battle had brought them a lot of benefits, not to mention other aspects. Fu Yunxiao sent a message to Chen Zong and Yun Yanxin to ask about it. The three of them talked and finally found out that after they separated, each of them had their own opportunities. However, Fu Yunxiao didn't enter the Ice Emperor's palace in the end because his strength was a little lacking, and he couldn't pass through the 1,000 meters of ice and snow. But even so, Fu Yunxiao's harvest this time was not small. After returning this time, I plan to go into seclusion and break through to the half-step Saint Realm, Fu Yunxiao said. After the trip to the Ice Emperor's secret realm, Fu Yunxiao's accumulation in the Transcendent Realm had reached the true limit, and he could clearly feel it. Therefore, if he continued to accumulate, he wouldn't be able to make any progress at all. It would be a waste of time and energy. Instead of that, he might as well go into seclusion and break through to the half-step Saint Realm. Only then could he continue to improve. As for Chen Zong and Yun Yanxin, they didn't plan to break through to the half-step Saint Realm because Chen Zong felt that he could continue to improve in the Transcendent Realm. For example, he could cultivate the Great Abyss Cloud Searing technique to a higher level and obtain a more powerful super-spiritual energy. In addition, he could further cultivate and master Saint-grade martial arts, and continue to comprehend the mystery of the Heart Sword, etc. Yun Yanxin, on the other hand, had awakened the power of a high-order bloodline. His talent, strength, and potential had increased, and there was still room for improvement. 36 geniuses from the Sky Pillar Upper Province had entered the Ice Emperor's secret realm, but 30 of them had left. In other words, 6 of them had died in the Ice Emperor's secret realm. 6 out of the 36 had died, and the remaining 30 had all obtained good opportunities. This kind of opportunity could be considered very good. After all, if one wanted to gain something, one had to pay a price. The Ice Emperor's secret realm was not a place to play house. Only 6 people had died, which was a very small loss. One by one, they left and returned to their respective sects. Chen Zong stared at the Flying Cloud Tao Master's back as he carefully sensed the Flying Cloud Tao Master's aura fluctuations. In the end, he determined that the Flying Cloud Tao Master was a powerhouse at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage. The Transcendent Realm was divided into 9 minor realms, and the Saint Realm was also divided into 9 minor realms. The peak of the Saint Rudiment stage was a 9th Heaven Saint Rudiment stage powerhouse. In other words, the 5 Tao Masters of White Cloud Mountain were all 9th level Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses. As for whether White Cloud Mountain had other 9th level Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses, Chen Zong had no idea. On the way back, Chen Zong's thoughts drifted as he thought about the king-ranked martial artists. King-ranked martial artists were a title, an honor, and a representation of one's strength. Every king-ranked martial artist had strength that surpassed ordinary Saint Rudiment stage powerhouses. After flying out of the snow region and passing through mountains, rivers, and forests, they finally saw White Cloud Mountain and the Sea of Clouds. Chen Zong and company heaved a sigh of relief as they relaxed a little. After all, when they left, everyone was in a state of excitement. Furthermore, they were constantly vigilant and cultivating. Although the other 7 people did not obtain the opportunity to enter the Ice Emperor's secret realm, they had cultivated in the snow region. Their strength had become purer, and they had also gained some benefit. Their strength had also increased. After returning to White Cloud Mountain, the 7 people left separately. However, Chen Zong, Fu Yunxiao, and Yun Yanxin were brought by the Flying Cloud Tao Master to the highest peak of White Cloud Mountain. That peak's name was very straightforward. It was called White Cloud Peak. The White Cloud Hall on White Cloud Peak was the main hall of White Cloud Mountain. The 3 of them headed towards White Cloud Peak's White Cloud Main Hall. This was a very normal situation. After all 3 of them had entered the Ice Emperor's secret realm. This was also the first time Chen Zong and Yun Yanxin had stepped into the main hall since they had entered White Cloud Mountain. The White Cloud Main Hall was entirely white, as if it was formed from compressed white cloud. Its hardness surpassed that of a half-saint artifact. What's more, it was covered with a layer of formless energy. Even a Saint Rudiment stage martial artist would not be able to destroy it easily. The White Cloud Main Hall was very spacious. The roof of the hall was a few hundred meters high. Under the azure sky, wisps of white cloud-like aura permeated the air. They were constantly changing. At times, they would turn into birds flying in the sky. At other times, they would turn into fish swimming in the water. At other times, they would turn into monkeys leaping in the forest. At other times, they would turn into cheetahs sprinting across the plains. Chen Zong and company instantly looked up into the sky, lost in thought. It felt as if they were standing in a vast field and looking up at the clear sky. They were watching clouds gather and disperse. It was like a fantasy. It was free, ethereal, and vast. In the deepest part of the hall, there were 5 huge chairs distributed in a semicircle. Figures appeared on top of these chairs. Each of these figures exuded an astonishing aura. Each of them had their own mysteries. When they appeared, their gazes fell on Chen Zong, Fu Yunxiao, and Yun Yanxin, but none of them said anything to disturb them. Those who entered the White Cloud Main Hall for the first time would inevitably be attracted by the dome of the main hall. Often, they would gain something. As for how much they gained, it was closely related to the individual. The 5 Tao Masters were very patient. For them, whose cultivation had reached the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage, it was extremely difficult to make further progress. It was almost impossible unless they encountered a great opportunity. However, opportunities were often relative. Perhaps a heaven-defying opportunity for a transcendent would be very ordinary for a Saint Rudiment stage cultivator. Therefore, an opportunity that could allow a Saint Rudiment stage cultivator to make further progress was extremely rare. At least, none of them had encountered such an opportunity in so many years. However, a peak Saint Rudiment stage cultivator's lifespan was extremely long, and they belonged to the top of the sky raising heaven territory. There were very few opponents, so they rarely took action. Not taking action was because they had cultivated their minds and become extremely patient. After a while, Fu Yunxiao was the first to wake up. He was a little confused, feeling as if he had gained something, but also as if he had gained nothing. It was an indescribable feeling. After another quarter of an hour, Yun Yanxin woke up. He felt the same as Fu Yunxiao. As for Chenzong, he was still immersed in it. Under Chenzong's gaze, the clouds in the dome were constantly changing. Sometimes it would transform into 100 beasts, sometimes into grass, sometimes into earth, sometimes into mountains, sometimes into the sea. In the end, no matter what it transformed into, it would all condense into swords. Beast swords, grass swords, wood swords, earth swords, stone swords, mountain swords, sea swords. As time passed, under Chen Zong's gaze, the dome of the sky seemed to have disappeared, and the white clouds seemed to have disappeared as well. There were only rays of sword light circling around, and each ray of sword light was entwined with wisps of cloud-white sword qi. The 5 Tao Masters were stunned, and there seemed to be a flash of surprise in their eyes. Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin's realm was not high enough, so they did not feel anything. However, they could feel that there seemed to be countless sword qi permeating the dome of the main hall of the white clouds, and it was hard to tell if it was real or not. "This boy has amazing talent," Lu Yun Dao Master exclaimed. His voice could only be heard by the other 4 Tao Masters. After comprehending it, he can transform his qi into swords. "This boy's talent in the sword principle is superb," Heavenly Cloud Tao Master, who was the leader, said slowly. Among the 5 Tao Masters, Heavenly Cloud Tao Master was the oldest and most qualified. "Huan Yun, you brought this boy back to the mountain gate, so you have an affinity with him," Refined Cloud Tao Master said with a smile. "If you're not tempted, I am." "You can't teach him," Huan Yun Dao Master said calmly. Refined Cloud Tao Master meant to take Chen Zong as his disciple, but Huan Yun Dao Master meant that he was not qualified to be Chen Zong's disciple. Refined Cloud Tao Master was not dissatisfied with Huan Yun Dao Master's words. Looking at Chen Zong's growth record and his current state of comprehension, it was true that the 5 Tao Masters were not qualified to be Chen Zong's master. What was a master? Imparting knowledge to resolve confusion, guiding the path and direction of progress, and providing help to the best of their ability. Chen Zong's talent was extremely high, and it was beyond the level that they could teach. If they tried to teach him, it might lead to a deviation. A true genius only needed to be given some guidance, and the rest was up to them to break through, comprehend, and progress. Chen Zong belonged to this kind of person. Otherwise, Huan Yun Dao Master would have taken Chen Zong as his disciple long ago. "This time, you can't compete with me," Flying Cloud Tao Master suddenly said, and the 4 Tao Masters understood what she meant. Time passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. Chen Zong was still in the state of comprehension, and he had not woken up. Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin did not disturb Chen Zong. Although they felt that they had gained something, they also knew that it was rare to be in such a state. Putting aside whether they had gained anything, at least they felt refreshed, and even their thoughts were more active than usual. The 2 of them did not talk, but looked around carefully. Everything in the White Cloud main hall looked so simple, but if one looked carefully, they would find that it was not simple at all. Every item was placed with care, and it was natural, like a miracle of nature. Every carving looked exquisite, as if it had grown naturally, just like the veins on a leaf. 4 hours passed, and Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin were still looking at the main hall, but Chen Zong still had not woken up. However, the sharpness of the sword qi in the air seemed to have become denser, and the 5 Tao Masters were even more shocked. Such talent in the way of the sword was really amazing, and it was indeed not something that they could teach. The trace of luck in their hearts was shattered. However, they were also happy. After all, such a genius was a disciple of White Cloud Mountain. 6 hours passed, and the 5 Dao Masters could feel that the sword qi had spread throughout the entire hall, as if it was everywhere. In the 8th hour, Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin finished looking, but they could not see the 5 Dao Masters. Chapter 1262. What a strange feeling! Chen Zong muttered to himself. His mind was very clear and he had a different understanding of swordsmanship. It was as if he was standing at a higher place and could see more scenery. It was a wonderful feeling. Chen Zong vaguely felt that his understanding of the 4th level of swordsmanship, the light sword theory, had deepened. The 4th level of swordsmanship was different from the previous 3 levels. It could not directly improve one's strength. To put it in perspective, the first 3 levels of swordsmanship were like practice, while the 4th level was like theory. The comprehension of each of the first 3 levels could directly improve one's strength. However, the 4th level would not directly improve one's strength, but it could improve one's potential. Moreover, the first 3 levels were divided into beginner, greater mastery, and full mastery, but the 4th level did not. In the 4th level, if one continued to comprehend, it was possible to comprehend sword will and step into the 5th level. No one knew when this epiphany would occur. It all depended on the opportunity. When the opportunity came, it would be comprehended and mastered. If the opportunity did not come, it would be impossible to comprehend. However, one thing was certain. If one continued to comprehend and deepen the light sword theory, there would be a chance to find the opportunity faster. As Chen Zong woke up, the aura of the 5 Dao Masters spread out and the 3 of them sensed it. Chen Zong, Fu Yunxiao, Yun Yanxin, I am the Heavenly Cloud Dao Master. The Heavenly Cloud Dao Master spoke first. I am the Refined Cloud Dao Master. I am the Illusory Cloud Dao Master. I am the Flowing Cloud Dao Master. I am the Flying Cloud Dao Master. Chen Zong, Fu Yunxiao, Yun Yanxin. Greetings, Dao Masters. The 3 of them bowed to the 5 Dao Masters in unison. No need for formalities. The 5 of us have asked you to come here because we want to know more about the Ice Emperor's secret realm. We hope you can tell us more, the Heavenly Cloud Dao Master said. His voice was gentle and not forceful at all. His meaning was obvious. If Chen Zong and the other 2 were willing to talk, then they could talk. If they were unwilling, then they did not have to say anything. He would not force them. However, most of it could be said that it would allow the sect to have a more direct understanding of the Ice Emperor's mystery realm. The next time it opened, the disciples who entered would be able to know more information in advance. As for the last opening, the strength of those who entered was too weak. Most of them died inside, and those who left alive did not gain much. It could be said that Chen Zong and the other 2 didn't intend to hide most of the things that happened in the Ice Emperor's secret realm. Of course, they wouldn't mention some of their personal encounters in detail, especially Chen Zong, who wouldn't mention the fact that he had obtained the remnant soul of the great Abyss King. First, it was Fu Yunxiao's explanation, followed by Yun Yanxin's. Chen Zong added on to the 2's foundation and told them all of his speculations. When the 5 Dao Lords heard this, they were extremely shocked. Who would have thought that the Ice Emperor's secret realm was even more mysterious than they had imagined, and the opportunities were even greater? I didn't expect there to be such a miraculous item like the ancient battle tablet in the Ice Emperor Mystery Land. The Luyun sect master sighed with emotion. Although they were at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage, they couldn't make the ancient battle tablet because they didn't have a suitable method. This was a method that belonged to the ancient powerhouses. Now, there might be an inheritance in the Tianyuan sacred region. Ancient battle tablet. Ancient Ice Emperor Palace. It's really amazing. The Luyun sect master also sighed with emotion. There's also the classification of geniuses. General grade, Marquis grade, Monarch grade, King grade, and Emperor grade. The foundation of the ancient times and the Tianyuan sacred region is indeed incomparable to that of our Sky Pillar Upper Province. The Heavenly Cloud Sect Master sighed heavily. Their conversation was limited to a certain range, and only they could hear it. Therefore, Chernzong and the others didn't know what they were talking about or what they were thinking. On the contrary, Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin widened their eyes in shock. It was their first time hearing about such a classification of geniuses. Did you meet anyone from the Tianyuan sacred region this time? The Flying Cloud Sect Master asked curiously, staring at Chernzong with a pair of clear and deep eyes. Flying Cloud Sect Master, there are 1 king, 2 monarchs, and 5 marquises from the Tianyuan sacred region who entered the Ice Emperor's secret realm this time, Chernzong replied. Chernzong knew more about this information, so it was natural for him to answer. What are the geniuses of the 3 of you? The Fantasy Cloud Sect Master also stared at Chernzong and asked. Back then, he had personally gone to Ancient War City to bring Chernzong back to White Cloud Mountain. At that time, he thought that Chernzong might be good, but he never thought that Chernzong could achieve such achievements. Thinking back, the Fantasy Cloud Sect Master felt like he was dreaming. Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin also looked at Chernzong. They didn't know how the geniuses were classified in the ancient times. I don't know much either. Chernzong said, the so-called general-grade geniuses are stronger than the limit of the transcendent realm, second only to the half-saint realm. They have some ability to resist ordinary low-level half-saints. The Marquis-grade geniuses can fight ordinary low-level half-saints with their own strength. Chernzong explained the classification of the geniuses. According to Chen Shidi, my genius grade should be the Marquis grade, Fu Yunxiao said. He wasn't very sure himself. After all, he had never fought a low-level half-saint opponent alone, so it was just some speculation. I should be the Marquis grade, Yun Yanxin thought for a while. He had stimulated the power of his bloodline, and his strength had increased greatly. Yun Yanxin was indeed the Marquis grade now, but Chernzong knew that Yun Yanxin still had room for improvement. Moreover, even if they were all in the Marquis grade, there were some differences in strength. I'm King grade. Chernzong didn't hide it. King grade. The 5 Tao Masters were shocked, and so was Fu Yunxiao. Only Yun Yanxin looked calm because Yun Yanxin had seen Chernzong's battle and strength with his own eyes. The gap between the Marquis grade and the King grade was the Monarch grade. Moreover, according to the information about the genius grades that Chernzong had just mentioned, a King grade genius could fight an ordinary mid-level half-saint at the limit of the transcendent realm. The half-saint grade was divided into low-level, mid-level, and high-level, and the gap between each level was not small. For a moment, the 5 Tao Masters didn't know what to say, and the entire White Cloud Hall fell silent. After a few breaths, the Heavenly Cloud Tao Master continued, this time, the 3 of you have gained a lot in the Ice Emperor's secret realm. I hope that you can give some things that you don't need to the sect. The sect won't treat you unfairly. The Flying Cloud Taoist Master had mentioned this before. After all, some opportunities might not be suitable for one's own. If it was kept in one's own hands, sometimes it would be a waste. It was better to give it to the sect and let the people who were suitable for it accept it. In a broad sense, this was more suitable for the development of the sect. Chernzong and the other 2 didn't have any objections. Chernzong intended to give the White Cloud Mountain mainly cultivation methods and martial art. The opportunities that I have obtained are mainly saint-grade cultivation methods and martial art. I need time to write them down, Chernzong said. After I finish writing them, I will give them to the sect. Okay. The 5 Tao Masters were very happy. No sect would complain about having too many saint-grade cultivation methods and martial art. It would further expand the foundation of the sect. The 5 Tao Masters imagined that the saint-grade cultivation methods and martial arts that Chernzong had obtained would not be too high level, and there wouldn't be many of them. Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin also each took out some things, mainly some ice attribute spirit herbs, which were somewhat useful. As for cultivation methods and martial arts, they didn't offer them. Maybe they didn't have them, or maybe they weren't suitable to offer them. Yun Yanxin, are you willing to worship me as your master? Suddenly, the flying cloud Dao master opened his mouth and stared at Yun Yanxin. Yun Yanxin was shocked, and a pleasant surprise surged from the bottom of his heart. I'm willing, Yun Yanxin quickly responded and knelt down. The flying cloud Dao master was one of the 5 Dao masters of White Cloud Mountain. He was a powerhouse at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage. In the Sky Pillar upper region, he was one of the top powerhouses. Even the strongest powerhouses in the 3 great 9-star forces were at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage. It was naturally a joyous occasion to worship a powerhouse at the peak of the Saint Rudiment stage as his master. Fu Yunxiao, are you willing to worship me as your master? The flowing cloud Dao master asked. Fu Yunxiao never thought that he would be pleasantly surprised. He was stunned for a moment, but he soon came to his senses. I'm willing. Fu Yunxiao greets master. Fu Yunxiao knelt down and kowtowed without hesitation. Worshipping a master at the peak of the Saint Realm as a master was a rare opportunity. From now on, one's cultivation path would be smoother and smoother, and one's cultivation and strength would improve much faster. Immediately, they all looked at Chen Zong. With Chen Zong's talent, they wondered which Dao master would accept him as his disciple. However, the Dao master did not mention accepting Chen Zong as his disciple. He did not even have the slightest idea. Are you surprised? The heavenly cloud Dao master asked. Chen Zong's talent is too high, especially his talent in Sword Dao. Although the 5 of us want to accept him as our disciple, it's a pity that we're not capable enough to teach him. With Chen Zong's talent, he can be ranked among the top even in the Tianyuan sacred region. This place is too small after all, the fantasy cloud Dao master said slowly. Fu Yunxiao and Yun Yanxin were stunned at first, but after thinking about it, they realized that it was indeed so. Shallow water could not raise a real dragon. The logic was the same. The Qingtian High Domain was huge compared to the central and lower domains, but it was very small compared to the Tianyuan sacred region. It was like comparing a remote village to a bustling city. With the talent that Chen Zong had shown, the Qingtian High Domain's environment was not enough. If he wanted to improve himself further, he would need a better environment. However, the Tianyuan sacred region and the 4 upper domains were like a natural chasm. Even with the flying cloud Dao master's strength, it would take him a lot of time to cross it. Moreover, he could only cross to the edge of the Tianyuan sacred region. It was another matter to enter the Tianyuan sacred region. It was not that easy. If the Lingwu sacred world was divided, the lower and central domains were on one level, the upper domains were on another level, and the Tianyuan sacred region was on another level. It was very difficult for people who were not from the Tianyuan sacred region to enter the Tianyuan sacred region. They might even have to pay a great price. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.